Great. So welcome, everyone. I will now call to order the March 28th, 2022 meeting of the City of Lafayette City Council. And we will go on to agenda item number 1, which is our call. I already just did that. I called to order. We'll go on to number 2, agenda item number 2, the roll call. And I will note that all council members except Councilmember Dawson are present. Councilmember Dawson had let us know ahead of time that she would be excused from this meeting. Moving on to agenda item number 3, may I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
A second.
Thank you. So moved by Councilmember Kwok and seconded by Councilmember Candell. We'll do the roll call vote. Councilmember Candell.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Nduri.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. So we have unanimously adopted our agenda. And now is the opportunity in the meeting for any members of the public who wish to speak to the council on an item that is not on the agenda. You could do that at this time, and we ask that you state your name and keep it to 3 minutes. I do want to note that because of various open meeting laws, we can take information, but we cannot discuss or act on it. So Suzanne, do we have any members of the public who would like to speak?
If any members of the public would like to speak on non-agenda items, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now.
And
I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you. And while I was going to say, while we're waiting on that, I think everyone who's on this list that I see knows that you will have opportunity on each agenda item to speak to the council. So with that, we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is presentations. And we have 3 exciting presentations this evening. And we will start with agenda item 5A and welcome Don Tatson, who is our representative to the Central Contra Costa Transit Authority, to give us an update.
They were letting me in while I think you were introducing me, but I've never been referred to as exciting before, so thank you.
All of you. Very
I'm not sure I can live up to that. So what I'd like to do is share my screen to reflect the work that's been done by staff. All right, can you see it?
Yes, well, I can see that you've started sharing your screen. There you go.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. So first, let me thank the council for making me your representative to the County Connection Board for the last several years. I've worked my way through the lower ranking chairs. I am now secretary. I become vice chair in July and chair in July of next year. So this is going to be a brief update as to what we've been up to. If it'll move. There we go. So a little bit about County Connection. We were effectively a joint powers authority that was established in 1980, and Gail Okama was our first representative and probably served for close to 20 years between representing Lafayette and representing the County Board of Supervisors. And actually the meeting room where we meet in Concord is named after her. We serve 10 cities and towns and unincorporated areas, and those are the members of the JPA. We do that with 57 fixed routes with large buses, and those are broken down between weekend, weekday services, 600 series, which are mostly school routes and some express services. We have 125 large buses, and they're a combination of diesel, electric, and hybrid power. We also have 63 smaller buses, which think of as a spirit van multiplied times many times, and they provide paratransit services. And then we also provide contracted services where someone contracts with us. So the one example would be if you hear that the Pleasant Hill BART station is out of service and there's a link established between Walnut Creek and Concord, we're contracted to provide that link along with AC Transit typically. Financial overview for the most recent year. Operating revenues and expenses are essentially always the same. And it was 43.5 million. About a little over 50% of that comes from the state via with TDA funds, 41% in STA funds. Measure J, which is a county half-cent sales tax, provides another 15%. Federal government chips in 19%. Fares were only 5% recently. So that's down from what they had been. So we're not a fare-driven agency compared with BART before the pandemic was generating about 50% of its revenue from fares. And in terms of where the money goes, it's primarily wages and benefits. And when you look at purchase transportation, that's actually the private operator for the paratransit vans. So most of that is wages and benefits as well. So you probably, over 75% of the total expenditure goes for wages and benefits. Supplies and services, heavily gasoline is another 13%, et cetera. So ridership. Well, ridership had been going along. It was hit by pre-COVID and essentially by laws that made getting driver's licenses easier. We are essentially a provider of last resort. People take the bus when they have few other choices, and those choices including their parents forcing them to take the bus to go to school. And so we responded, and then COVID hit and things just fell off the roof, as you see from this chart. Between February and April of 2020, we lost 80 to 90% of our riders. And this is broken out between weekends and weekdays. So the weekend traffic has not been as badly hit as a percentage terms, but it's always a lot less than the weekday traffic. And it's wandered around since then. We reduced our service levels by 13%, pretty much cutting frequency on low ridership routes. We improved our coordination with BART. We did not resume the 600 series schools bus service until the fall of 21. And that is now down only 25%. So it's doing better than the 50% overall reduction we've had. Express route ridership, think of the buses from Walnut Creek to Bishop Ranch, is still down about 70%. But I think as those places want employees to come back, we'll see that pick up. We had a free rides promotion in September of last year in coordination with BART and other agencies. And that helped, got us about 15% more rides. And then the funding ran out, and we are looking to do that again sometime later this year because it's a way to get some passengers back. The Lafayette service is the main fixed route service is Route 6. This shows you what our pre-COVID ridership was and what it was in February 2 years later. Route 606 is a school bus route, but also serves other areas in Orinda and Moraga. They have also been hit, but not quite as badly. The 625 route is the one that serves Acalanes. And that is that's, I think, one bus in the morning, one bus in the afternoon, has relatively low ridership, although for one bus route, it's not too bad. And Route 626 goes to Stanley and St. Mary's and has somewhat less riders before the pandemic and somewhat more than the 625 route now. Okay, so we used to have a route that went from the Lafayette BART station to the Walnut Creek BART station via Pleasant Hill Road, Olympic, et cetera. It never did very well. And when we were facing revenue reductions and had to make some reductions in service with a route that got only about 70 passengers a day, even before the pandemic, that was a candidate for elimination, and it was, along with some others. There's been talk of a Lafayette Shuttle, and in 2015, we conducted a Lamarinda service plan, which identified this as a tier 2 priority compared to more service on the Route 6 area. What it looked at was peak hour service every 20 minutes between Pleasant Hill Road and BART. The estimated operating cost was about $350,000 a year, but that's using our wage rates and things like that in our vehicles. So there may be ways to do that less expensively. To give you an example, the Walnut Creek Shuttle, which was an existing shuttle before Walnut Creek paid to electrify and eliminate fares, The city provides $280,000 a year historically, although they've recently reduced that to $140,000 a year. And what they're trying to do is to pay for lost wage or lost fare revenue. So I think if Lafayette is interested in doing this, let me know and I'll see what we can negotiate. It may be it may be possible to negotiate a better deal than just the estimated operating cost, but that would mean we'd have to take those dollars from somewhere else because there's no new sources of revenue coming in. With return to response to COVID, we didn't know, like everybody else, when the COVID situation would come back, would ease, and therefore we were told to maintain employment for County Connection and 88 paratransit staff. We have largely done that. There have been a number of retirements, so we're down in terms of number of workers. And we also wanted to continue service for essential workers in communities of concern, which are transit dependent. So for example, an area that would cover would be the Monument Corridor in Concord. We also wound up doing some different things to try and keep everybody busier than they would be otherwise. We provided emergency transportation to over 400 COVID-19 passengers. We provided vaccination transports for John Muir Health patients and La Marinda residents. And we did a number of things in the entire county in terms of delivering meals, delivering school lunches, because you'll recall that the governor ordered that even though schools were closed, the lunch program would continue and be available for all youth. And we provided delivery to at-risk youth. We took food to the county and food banks, and we did about 3,600 meal deliveries to senior citizens around our service area. So we were trying to do things that would keep us busier than we would be otherwise. So financial projections. We were, in summary, we're always looking at charts that show if we don't do something, the sky will fall. So this is one of those charts. It looks at the TDA reserves, which is the main holding pot for our funding and how that's going to change. You'll see an increase in the fiscal year 2022. That's in part because we reduced expenditures, but more so because we also got some federal funding, and that's more than offset our expenditures and loss of revenue. We can do various cost-cutting measures, and we have that. At one level, you don't have to worry about the agency going bankrupt because we can just continue to reduce service as revenues go down. But at some point, the community has to ask itself, is that really a good thing? How little service can you stand for before you provide new sources of revenue? And we've also started to do some collaborative partnerships. The Livermore-Amador Valley Transit Authority is providing an express service connecting Martinez to Dublin along I-680. They're using hydrogen fuel cell buses for that. We've started a paratransit one-seat ride regional pilot. So for example, if you'd wanted to go from Martinez or Antioch to somewhere in Alameda County using paratransit, before you had to go to some place and wait for the next bus to come, and it was a long and arduous trip. And now we can book one-seat rides, and we do interagency cost exchanges. And we're also looking at a joint provision for a provision of 88 paratransit services. We switched our vendor about 1.5 years ago, and we like the new vendor more than the old one. And the Livermore-Amador Valley Transit Authority is also switching, and they are thinking of contracting through us with the same vendor and then letting us manage both. And those are the highlights. And I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
Great, thank you. And if we could, I'm sure you're clicking the button now to stop sharing the screen.
Yes.
So that I can see all our colleagues. And while you're doing that, you thanked us for letting you continue to serve and represent. And I would like to say thank you for wanting to continue to do that. You said Gail Alkema served for how many years? And I guess my question is, with this representation, how many years have you served on?
I think I'm up to about 8.
Okay,
Gail wasn't even probably halfway through before she had served for 8 years.
yeah.
There's only been 3 representatives from Lafayette. There's me, Erling Horn, started serving when Gail stepped down, and then I took over when Erling stepped down about 8 years ago.
Good. Well, thank you very much for continuing to provide that consistency in your retirement from the council. So thank you. Are there any questions from my colleagues for, yes, Councilmember Kendall?
Yeah, thank you. Great report. And I learned a lot once again. Thank you. So you mentioned we had the like extra services during COVID. Now, were they, I'm totally supportive. Everything that you did was just so good. Was that just a part of the general funding, or was there extra money that came in and helped cover some of those costs?
It was general funding. Some of it was using up the federal funding we got. You remember the first priority during COVID was to maintain as much employment as we could because we didn't know when we'd have to come back.
Right.
So we had a lot of bus drivers sitting around saying, what do I do? And so we said, well, go deliver some Meals on Wheels. Go take food to the food banks. Deliver some, COVID patients to hospitals, things like that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Councilmember Quat.
Thanks for the great report. Very educational for me, Don. I had a question. You commented about the sky is falling and the finances, that slide, and you mentioned new sources of funding. And so could you explain, like, what are the types of funding that you would go after, that are most likely ways to raise money in the event that it were to be necessary?
Probably the most likely one, and one that's been tried a couple of times but hasn't been successful, is participating in a sales tax, part of which goes to transit. So for example, you'll remember that 15 to 20% of our current revenue comes from Measure J. When the Transportation Authority floated a tax measure, I think it was back in 2020, early 2020. We would have gotten money from that. Didn't pass. We didn't get the money. But they may consider another measure. And of course, I assume you'll want us to ask for a share of that.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for the chart that showed about the different routes and the route to Acalanes. And at our most recent city schools meeting, Superintendent Nickerson did announce that beginning next school year, Acalanes will go to a 8:30 everyday start. Is there a potential that there could be, that would help to maybe increase ridership and get some of the vehicles off of the road on that route? Or do you have?
Well, we will coordinate our schedule with the school schedule. Whether that gets more kids to ride the bus really depends upon the motivation of the kids.
Right.
They're there.
Or their parents.
We're going to go by. They have to decide that they're going to get on the bus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I know that Superintendent Nickerson felt hopeful that maybe it would provide more consistency.
Yeah, what it does is we operate at the same time now every day. So we operate to get kids there for the earliest start. So on the days when they start later, and it happens at the other schools as well, is you've got kids sitting around for an extra 45 minutes before school starts. So by having a consistent 8:30 start time, we'll be able to tailor our route so that there is a reasonable amount of time they get there in advance, but not excessive.
Great. Thank you. I know that's come up as a possible solution whenever we're out doing these the traffic studies.
And if we suddenly find that there are lots and lots of kids lined up at stops, too many to carry, then we can, then we'll look at adding a bus. For example, the Miramonte gets more than one bus a day, but it also picks up regular riders.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about our service is that thanks to a variety of laws, we cannot have school-only trips. So anybody can get on one of our buses on a route. That is one of the reasons you don't see public transit going to elementary schools. Parents are reluctant to put them on those routes, or if they existed. But you do see it starting in middle school, which is why we've got buses to Stanley. There's a bus to Orinda Intermediate, et cetera.
Right. Great. Well, thank you. And the report was very informative. So if there are no other questions on the part of the council, we will open it up to public comment. And I see a hand up already. So Suzanne, thank you for.
And I'll just say thank you, and I'll be back in April for my other volunteer role.
Yes, thank you. We were almost had him the Don Tatson show tonight, but we decided we would shift the legislative report to later. So Suzanne, it looks like David Clark would like to come over and ask a question or make a comment.
You are correct. And following David Clark, if anyone else would like to comment on this item, we have one hand raised. If anyone else would like to comment, please use the raise hand feature now.
Great, thank you. Welcome, Mr. Clark.
Hi, thank you. Oh, Mr. Clark. Well, thanks, Don. That's informative. I've got a couple of comments. I would encourage the council to keep this report in mind as we move forward, because if the BART gets up, I mean, this could be years away, but if BART gets upzoned or upgraded, or a whole bunch of people live there, we're going to need a shuttle, and this is a wheel we wouldn't have to reinvent. So, I mean, that's one thing. And then I know collectively been talking about a downtown specific plan for the Mount Diablo corridor. This could be part of that as well. I mean, and again, at some point in the future, and you've probably already thought of those things, but those seem like logical connections to me. That's one thing. Another thing is, with respect to the schools, this is not entirely anecdotal, but I got stuck in some really bad traffic this morning outside of San Ramon Valley High School. So I don't know if you've got buses going there or not, but if not, man, that seems like a target of opportunity. But and the last thing is, as far as revenue sources, how about advertising? Can you accept advertising dollars? You could, I don't know if you want to wrap a bus to look like a Chiquita banana, or put something on the inside for, I don't know, San Francisco Symphony or whatever. But is advertising revenue something that would generate enough dollars to make it?
So we do accept advertising revenue, but I'm not sure we've ever been proposed to look like a Chiquita banana. I'm not sure we turn it down as the opportunity came up. We have done bus wraps. We've done, signage on the side. At peak ridership, we made about a little over 100,000 a year from that. So it's not small, but out of 43.5 million, it's not large. And we contract out for that service. We've reduced what we get for that, because there was so few cars on the road during the COVID period, they couldn't get people to advertise, and they pass along a percentage of the revenue to us. So hopefully, as there are more cars on the road and we have buses out there, we can increase the rates again. But it's not going to get to the point where it's a major source of revenue, providing 10, 15% of our total revenue.
Okay.
Okay.
Because I want to keep you out there until we can use you 8 years from now or something like that. Thank you. That's what I had. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we'll bring over the next speaker.
The next speaker is Robert Lavoie, followed by Lauren Herpick.
Welcome, Mr. Lavoie.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Don. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you.
A quick question, and I don't know if you'll have this off the top of your head or something, but I assume there's some statistics seeing that sort of downward trend on the graph. I was wondering if there's statistics that you guys track for total miles driven, total customers, and then the cost per mile per customer or something like that, to see, how the comparison is for the bus system versus, people driving their own cars.
Well, in terms of the bus system, we have more statistics than you can shake a stick at, so to speak. And we update them monthly. I think generally the bus, the fare is $2.50. So if you're driving your car and you actually think about all the costs you incur to drive your car, you can't go very far for $2.50. So it's a lot less expensive, but there's people's perceptions about buses and people's perception about the time spent in buses versus cars. So I think have to be a lot of education done to convince people that the bus is a better alternative. One of the things we've been looking at with the Contra Costa Transportation Authority is not on routes in Lafayette, but on routes up and down 680 to allow the bus to ride on the shoulder during peak periods. And even if it only went 30 miles an hour when the traffic isn't moving at all, that's 30 miles an hour faster than you're going sitting in traffic.
Yeah, that might get a lot of attention.
We hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll now bring the next speaker in. And
Yes, the next speaker is Lauren Herpick, and there are currently no other hands raised after Lauren.
great, thank you.
And give me just a moment. Actually, Joanne, can you bring in Lauren for me, please?
She's coming over now.
Thank you. Welcome, Ms. Herpick.
Hi, Council. Hi, Don. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
So this is a really great presentation. This is definitely one of the aspects of the sort of solution building that we're trying to do with the Safe Route to Akalani's project, to see sort of how we can collaborate. Again, everything is a multi-prong approach. So, how do we look at buses, how we look at bike paths? So this has been really eye-opening. So thank you for taking the time to do this. First thing, I think, just kind of seeing the revenue and the expenditures. I had spoken to Board of Supervisor, our supervisor, Candace Anderson, and she had mentioned, we were asking about grant money for the potential School Street bike path from the trail to First Street. And she said, well, we're not going to get any money from the county, but maybe a CCTA grant would be a place to look. And I'm kind of dismayed thinking that might not be the place based off of what I see in terms of revenue and expenditure. So you can let me know if there is any funding available.
So I'm here representing CCCTA. You think of an extra C.
Oh, there's another
CCTA,
C.
and so for that, you should address your question to Mayor Geringer.
All right, I've talked to Teresa about it. Yeah. Okay, so never mind that part. Okay, my second one is regarding Route 625. I know Whitney Simon at the La Marinda School Bus Program just put out a survey for those of us in the Lafayette School District. I'm curious if a survey might be completed with Akalani. So in addition to potentially regulating the school bell schedule, I'm looking at the route specifically for 625 and the stops. And I noticed, especially as a downtown resident, I love being walkable. That's why we moved here, but Connor will eventually have to right now drive to Akalani's. The two stops where we would consider right now, the stop options are Carroll and Mount Diablo and the BART. Everyone in the middle, the bus, I think, is passing. So I don't know if there's any stops in between there, but if I'm just looking at the route, those are the only two options. And I would say anybody in my neighborhood, it's too far to walk. The last thing I want to say before my time runs out is that this messaging idea, absolutely key. This is something that Whitney and I talked about. I had a great conversation with her last week in terms of how do you message the cost effectiveness of taking the bus? And we did the same thing. It's $2.15 per ride, so $5.30. That is less than a Starbucks cup of coffee a day or equivalent. So using that sort of messaging, I think will really help, and especially with high tax gas prices right now. I think people will really start seeing the benefit of the bus when they break it down by the day and the per ride cost. So anywho, thank you for the presentation. This was
Yeah,
really
and
great.
I will inquire as to why we can't add more stops along Mount Diablo for the run Stocolanas.
We would use it, Don. I think there's a lot of people in our neighborhood. If there was a stop by the library, and then also in the middle for those people in the Lafayette Orchards, kind of downtown apartments. So in that section, you'd get a lot. Survey would be great, but I would imagine more ridership.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I see we have one more hand up.
The next speaker is Grace Dixon. And there are no other hands raised after Grace Dixon.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, I just pulled over so I could speak. I completely agree with Lauren's statement. I too live in the downtown Trails neighborhood, and my daughters, all my kids, we had to drive them to school because there wasn't an effective way for them to walk without having to cross over the freeway. So if we could survey the trail neighborhood and downtown residents, adding an additional stop in between Carroll and Bart would be incredible, because then, I mean, I know it's not going to happen. My daughter has 2 more years, but for somebody others, some of my neighbors' daughters and sons, it would be incredible if we could survey and find out if there was interest. So thank you so much for considering that.
Great.
Thank
And thank you for pulling over to make your call. And I don't see any additional hands up. And so I will again say thank you to Mr. Tatson for representing us and for this great report. And you can see that there is, I think, interest in the community and interest on the part of the council to continue to work together. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we'll see you in a couple of meetings.
See you in a
Yeah. Okay, so with that, we will move on to the next exciting presentation. I'm going to stick with that. And we will invite our Chief of Police, Chief Ben Aldrich, to come and give us the annual police report update. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Council. Excuse me. I want to move to share screen here as we get ready to kick off. All right, Suzanne, just confirm that shows up.
I am not seeing it yet.
And not seeing anything yet.
Okay, give me 1 second. I apologize. All righty, is that better?
Yes, there you go.
All right, confirm it's in the display mode.
No, it's not. It's still in the.
It's still
Okay, there
in
we go.
speaker mode.
Okay.
There it is.
Okay. Well, good evening, Council. Thank you for the opportunity to present the 2021 annual report from the Police Department. 2021 continued to be a challenging year with COVID for us, ensuring a healthy and safe workforce as we went out and served our community. Also in 2021, we saw a lot of high-profile crime activity that was reported in the Bay Area and more specifically in Contra Costa County around us. And I'm very happy to report on our data for this past year. There were some unique challenges that required us to alter our staffing, increase it to address concerns that arose during this past year. For us, when we alter personnel or alter our staffing, it typically comes in the form of overtime and additional units on the street. As I kick off this presentation, this is our most recent team photo that we were able to have after a lot of COVID restrictions were lifted. Currently, we're authorized for 17 sworn officers, and that includes myself and 2 sergeants, along with 14 officers. Typically, 24/7, we're staffed with 2 beat officers per shift, working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and then from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. We're also supplemented by 2 detectives and 2 traffic officers that ride motorcycles. With all the challenges, our staff continues to stay very proactive. In 2021, we had over 210 arrests of suspects in our community. An arrest can include someone that was cited and released from the police department and or was booked at the main jail in Martinez. This is just an overview of our UCR, or our Uniform Crime Reporting data that gets reported to the FBI. And if you look going back to 2012 and then going into 2021, we've continued to see a decrease across the 8 categories that are reported to the FBI. We'll talk about this data for a minute, but starting in 2022, the FBI is rolling out a new form of reporting data that will include 58 categories, not just 8 categories, that really break things out. Of the 8 categories in front of you, for example, larceny includes a lot of different types of crimes, theft of bicycles, theft of vehicles that are unlocked, or stealing items out of vehicles that are unlocked, stealing things out of sheds and things of that nature. And so some of these categories are going to be broken out into more detail, a part of what's called NIBRS reporting, the National Incident-Based Reporting System. So this graph does show that we've continually reduced crime, and we'll talk about some of those other stats in the presentation. But I would expect in the next annual report, how this is presented to look a little more different with a little more detail. And the goal with part 1, uniform crime reporting, is this gets reported to the FBI, and residents can do comparisons against us and other communities in the nation and get a sense of how we're doing. This graph here just breaks out exactly for 2021 when crime stats were reported and in which month. Again, for us, property crimes, which would be category 1, 2, 3, and 4, persons crimes, 1, 2, 3, and 4, continue to be low overall, with property crimes making up a large majority of our crime stats for our community. Calls for service. We saw an expected decrease in 2020, going from 16,700 to 14,000. 2021, I don't have a great answer why calls reduced so much, except hopefully one is because crime did go down, which it did. And don't have a lot more explanation. I expect that number to go up and stay along more with our averages over the last several years, but we definitely had a reduction in calls for service. Again, as I mentioned, crimes against persons continue to be our highest priority, and fortunately for us, are usually our lowest crime stats. In 2021, we had 4 assaults with a deadly weapon reported. A deadly weapon can include a gun, a knife, the typical weapons we think of, but also can include any item, say a metal pipe or other object that could inflict serious bodily injury and or death. Of the 4 reported assaults with a deadly weapon, all 4 of them involved people that were known to each other. One was a domestic situation between adult son and mother. Another one is 2 folks arguing over a parking situation, and one of the drivers ran over a person's foot with their vehicle. We had another case of 2 workers at a construction site getting into a confrontation, and one assaulted another with a metal pipe. And then in November, at a care facility, a residential care facility, a patient there struck one of the caregivers with a wooden chair. So those are our 4 assaults with a deadly weapon. We did have 5 robberies reported in 2021. 2 were with weapons and 3 were with physical force. Of those, in February, we had a person enter a store on the Mount Diablo, a convenience store, and demanded money from the register and displayed a firearm. We were able to successfully use our situational awareness cameras, identify the suspect and the vehicle that they got into, able to put the plate of that vehicle into the felony want system. And the following day, Piedmont PD was alerted to their presence via their license plates cameras, and we were able to arrest the suspects and file charges. And then in August, we had a person enter a convenience store off Mount Diablo and steal alcohol while displaying a knife or threatening the clerk with a knife. Again, our partnership with our 2 other police departments continues to be a benefit. Orinda and Moraga officers responded to the area, and a Moraga officer located the suspect walking along Mount Diablo, and we were able to take them into custody and file charges. For our strong arm robberies, these are typically cases, and in fact, for 2021, they're all cases where someone, well, let me just go through them. Sorry. In March, we had 2 people enter a store and steal an expensive bottle of alcohol. A clerk tried to intercept them by locking the front door. They pushed the clerk to the ground and fled. And again, because they used physical force while committing the theft, it's considered a robbery, strong arm. We were, again, in that case, able to use situational awareness cameras and locate the vehicle or identify the vehicle. And a couple months later, a Lafayette officer was patrolling the downtown area, saw the vehicle as related to the March case, make an enforcement stop and contact the suspect and make an arrest, and charges have been filed. In October, this was a unique case and is not unique to Lafayette. Some other jurisdictions had some similar reported cases in 2021. We had a citizen walking in the downtown area and a vehicle pulled up beside her. They began talking with her and offering her jewelry and displaying jewelry. And while they were doing that, they removed her jewelry from her wrist and her neck and tried to replace it with other jewelry. When she said, "Hey, give me back my jewelry," they threw a sock full of jewelry back at her and took off. And while they were removing one of the items, they used force to pull it from her wrist. And basically it was costume jewelry, and they stole her jewelry in that case. And San Ramon, for example, had several reported cases similar to where folks walk up to someone, again, engage in a conversation, distracting, and saying, "Hey, I want to sell you jewelry. Hey, let me try this on you." While they're doing it, they're removing your jewelry. Typically, they focus on folks that either English is not their first language, and they're just sort of trying to figure out what's happening. And all of a sudden, before they know it, their real jewelry, if you will, was stolen, and the suspects fled. That case is ongoing, and we're still looking into that one. And then in October, we had a case in downtown. Someone entered a store, stole several items, and while fleeing, pushed one of the clerks to the ground. And again, that was considered a case of strong arm robbery. We did have 2 reported rapes in 2021. Obviously, for the sake of the victims, we don't go into details, but one was reported in January, and through the active investigation, through the investigation and through our processing of evidence, we were able to identify the suspect, and arrest has been made in that case. The other case is ongoing and is between 2 individuals that were known to each other, and we'll continue to investigate that. We did see an increase in domestic violence in 2021, both in felony cases and misdemeanor cases. Unfortunately, that was consistent with trends that we saw really throughout the nation, but throughout California. And I'll show you a graph here in a second that just sort of shows you that increase compared to past years. And we'll get to that graph here in a minute. Property crimes, again, continue to be our largest crime and continue to be our focus of a lot of our energy and efforts and staffing. The top graph here is residential burglaries. And again, I wanted to give you a 10-year perspective, going back to 2011 and going through 2021. We reached our lowest number, I won't say ever, but in the data that we've been tracking for a long time, it is probably our lowest number ever. Of the 6 burglaries that occurred in 2021, we have successfully solved 3 of them and are continuing to work on the other 3. Commercial burglary is another crime of concern for us, especially as it affects our downtown businesses, which are an important part of our community. We're very fortunate to see a reduction in 2021 as other communities actually saw an increase in this area, whether it was commercial burglary and or theft from a store. The statistic for commercial burglary and some other stats we'll look at can fluctuate to some degree. We recently had a case, it'll be reported for 2022, but 2 individuals broke into a business a complex building and broke into 3 or 4 different businesses, stealing items from them. We were able to close that case and file charges along with other jurisdictions, but literally in one time frame, one day, one breaking in of the main building, they committed 4 commercial burglaries, which really can vary that statistic from year to year to some degree. But I am happy to see that reduction. Auto burglaries. An auto burglary is when the vehicle is locked and the thief uses force to break into the vehicle, typically smashing the window. Again, we saw a pretty decent reduction. Of course, 2020, less vehicles were out there, and we expected to see the reduction, but happy to see it continue to reduce into the following year. Theft from a vehicle. This is when the vehicle's unlocked and the item that was stolen or the items were valued at over $950, and that is considered a felony, versus petty theft from vehicles considered a misdemeanor. And again, we see a reduction there in 2021. The other big challenge of 2021, and the council, of course, we've had a lot of discussions about this, is traffic safety, pedestrian safety, and bicycle safety. The death of Joe Shami at the roundabout in April, and of course of Ashley Diaz in front of Stanley while working as a crossing guard, had a very impactful, it was very impactful for our community, and really positive in the sense that it's generated a lot of discussion about what safety, what roadway, what things you want to do within our community to improve safety, and most specifically for pedestrians and cyclists and our kids going to and from school. Traffic citations for us, as you can see over a 4-year comparison, can vary. We expect a reduction in 2020 with schools closed most of the year, and a lot less folks commuting to and from work. In 2021, we did see a reduction in traffic citations, and we are hoping to bring that number back up, understanding that traffic enforcement is a part of the 3 E's of enforcement, engineering, and education. For a small police department like us, most of our traffic citations are generated by the 2 traffic officers. And in November, unfortunately, one of our traffic officers went out with a significant back injury and is still off duty. And just even an example of how we can fluctuate while still prioritizing traffic safety, but understanding that citations as a number can vary. In January of 2022, my one traffic officer 1 week was working graveyards to cover for COVID vacancies, and another week was on vacation, and he was finishing up a fatal traffic accident that occurred on Christmas Eve due to a drunk driver who killed herself in that accident. We only wrote 25 tickets in January. Compared to February, we wrote over 210 tickets. So we can see a vast, we can see it change from month to month quite dramatically. But I want to assure you that we continue to prioritize traffic safety. Right now, we currently put out overtime for an additional unit to work between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. to focus on traffic safety. I can't force officers to work that, but out of a 7-day work week, we typically staff that at least 4 days out of the week, which again is increasing our traffic enforcement. Traffic collisions, and this is a 5-year data point. Again, in 2020, we did see a reduction, which was expected with less vehicular traffic. We do see an uptick. Blue being accidents that just have property damage only. The orange would be accidents that have an injury reported. And then we did have 3 fatal accidents reported in 2021, which is a dramatic increase from us from typical years of 0, 1, or and so that was definitely significant. Again, that 3rd fatality occurred on Christmas Eve. An individual who unfortunately had a history of drunk driving and arrest with our agency had been out driving while intoxicated, crossed the double yellow line, struck another vehicle. Luckily, the people in the other vehicle suffered only minor injuries, while the driver who was intoxicated did suffer life-ending injuries. So again, this just breaks down a month-to-month comparison over 2021. Code enforcement, as the council recalls, we went to a contract model for code enforcement beginning in October. and I won't go into detail. You all know how it was handled prior to. Obviously, we saw an increase in cases in October. And I will say our team with code enforcement has done a great job in increasing notices and notices of violation, specifically with fire hazards and weed abatement in trees and other concerns with our wildfire preparedness. They've been much more aggressive in that area, and it's been a very successful thing. Our calls for service are at the highest they've been in many years, or cases, I would say, and that means we're being more proactive. Crime Prevention Commission is one of two commissions that I work with. We are looking forward to bringing Citizens Academies back in 2022, and we're discussing having one in late spring, early summer, and then hopefully having one in the fall. Emergency Preparedness Commission has been hard at work. Again, we continue to prioritize our emergency plans of preparedness, reviewing our emergency operations plan, preparing for public safety power shutoffs. Our community warning system, our SAMs, continue to be some of the highest in the county, considering our population. Alert wildfire, we continue to install cameras. I think we're pushing almost 50 cameras in and around Contra Costa County, and those were all installed by Lafayette PD with the support of this council. Zone Haven is another feature having to do with our evacuation zones. And of course, our AM radio station 1670 that our PIO Suzanne helps keep running day to day and is able to be utilized during an emergency. So we'll move to questions and comments. For all those that are listening in, the annual report is available. It was a part of the agenda for tonight. There is a lot more detail in the full report, so feel free to review that. This was just a real high-level preview. So I'll go to stop sharing screen.
Great, thank you. And thank you very much, Chief, for the report, but for all that you and your team do throughout the year. And I will have a question, I think, or two, but we'll go to my colleagues to see if anyone has a question or comments for questions now for the chief, and then we'll go to public comment. Councilmember Kendall.
Thank you, Ben. And Councilmember Kwok and I had the wonderful experience of having this be our second time through this report. And I was hoping you were going to talk about Rocco and all the good work that Rocco's been doing.
So great point. The photos I did not have attached. I could post some photos up. We wanted to talk about Rocco and our team and some of the things that we worked on over this past year. Obviously, a lot of community events were reduced dramatically due to COVID and public safety. Rocco continued to do a lot of activities in and around the community. We did events at school sites. We did events at Temple Isaiah and their school site up there. And I'm looking for the photos here real quick. If you guys are okay with me sharing screen real quick, is this, I know we're going backwards, so is that okay?
It's fine, yeah.
Okay, all right.
I noticed him standing on the front step in the group photo, but that is fine.
So just some, we'll go through these quickly. Just your team was still alive and well working in 2021. This is Sharon, our full-time parking enforcement officer, with two of our part-time.
We can't see them big, they're small.
Ooh,
Yeah,
they
they
are.
are
Okay,
small.
I apologize. Still small?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, I do
Because
apologize.
they're not, that's okay.
I will exit out of that. And I apologize, I didn't have those better prepared. We did do a lot of different activities. We continue to be invited out to school sites. We had a great example where Rocco and the team went out for a young man who is about 5 or 6 years old, has cancer, and we did a photo shoot with him and his family. He always wanted to be a police officer, and our team went out there with Rocco and we were able to put on a little demo for him and his family. Again, we've done several of our science fairs early this year with our drone and other equipment going out to our elementary schools. And so I'm looking forward to 2022 and having a lot more public engagement. whether it's at the Art and Wine, the Candy Scramble. A lot of those things were missing for 2020 and 2021. So looking forward to that.
Great, thank you. And great question. We didn't want to forget Rocco. Any other questions from any of my colleagues? I did have a question, and you touched on it. But the other day at the coffee with the mayor, I was asked about the people going into Safeway, for example, or Whole Foods, and coming out with shopping carts full of merchandise and just leaving, and that the grocery store clerks, staff, are basically told not to try to do anything. And when you're giving the examples of people being shoved to the ground on their way out, I appreciate that recommendation. But what is I guess, sort of the number of those that happened? Does the police department get called? What's your sort of take on that?
So I would say overall, we have seen a slight increase in those crimes over the last 2 to 3 years, where people feel more emboldened to, for a better term, shoplift, where they can go in and out of a store. A lot of companies, for liability purposes, have really greatly reduced what they have their staff attempt to do. But the one thing they still have their staff do is call us. And anytime we get called, we respond. We've had a lot of cases of where we've intercepted folks. Obviously, there's 2 routes. Either one, they're getting in a vehicle, or the other route that we typically see is trying to get to the BART station. I don't have a statistic on that tonight, but many times we catch those folks before they get to BART and or when they're on the BART platform. Sometimes businesses just want their product back and don't want to prosecute or basically want charges filed. But we are very proactive in that area, and we do have a very robust business district that is encouraged and feels comfortable calling us. So we do come out to those calls every time. You do see in some communities where they don't even bother calling the police department, and we never want to have that model here in Lafayette. I don't think we're definitely not there. Of course, a business can always elect not to call us. That is their choice. But by and large, some of the vendors that you mentioned tonight do call us. We do respond. Sometimes if they're able to get on the freeway before we can get there, they do get away, and the odds of recovering and or identifying the suspects becomes a lot more limited. But we do have a pretty high success rate for that crime stat, if you will, compared to a lot of other agencies.
Great, thank you. And then I had another question, I guess, and I'm not sure exactly what I'm looking for us to have done, but on the hit and run statistics in the traffic accidents, and do you have statistics for, we know we have 30 hit and runs. I think that's what I counted, or what it showed in the stats, and how many actually you find out who it was and there's an arrest and potentially a conviction. I'm not meaning to put you on the spot tonight,
no, that's okay.
But the statistics, it jumped out.
So I don't have better data than what I'll go over right now. Of the 30, I believe only 2 involved injuries.
Okay, thanks.
And a majority of them involve a solo vehicle into parked cars, unoccupied cars, and or property, where we get called in the next morning and say, hey, it happens to the city, right? City light pole gets hit, bushes get taken out. Again, for a private business or private landowners, they've had property damage. So a lot of ours involve one vehicle damaging some type of property.
Okay.
That doesn't involve someone else actively being in a vehicle. So again, majority of those are property damage only. I believe only 2 were considered injury collisions. And I apologize, I don't have the data whether we solved those or not. Again, a lot of our hit and runs do happen along corridors that have cameras, either via the situational awareness cameras or residential or business cameras. Some things that get reported hit and run are cases where you may not be able to prove the intent that they intended to cause damage and leave. They still get documented as a hit and run, but potentially sometimes get resolved as property damage only collisions, as long as we're able to identify the driver, collect their insurance, and make sure whoever they damaged remained whole. So I apologize. I'll make sure I have that data with me next time. I apologize.
No, I'm actually glad to hear that they were primarily property damage. So
I would say the city is probably the number one victim, if you will, in property damage.
stop
Like if you,
signs and
yeah,
television poles.
yeah. So if you were to identify, typically one person's only victimized once on this. I would say City of Lafayette property is if you were to look at one victim of this crime, we're probably the highest data point on that. And we work with our public works department. Of course, we want to identify those people so that we're not leaving our city and our residents on the hook to repair that damage. So we do actively investigate those crimes, though.
Great, thank you. Vice Mayor Nduri.
Well, first, Chief, thanks for the very informative and well-organized report. Very, very helpful. I just want to follow up on something that really comes out in the report, and that's the benefit of the situational awareness cameras. You just mentioned them. Do you have what you need in terms of the cameras and the license plate readers?
So the answer is yes, and the fact that I wouldn't be asking for additional funding. We already currently have funding built into our Crime Prevention Commission budget. It is a program that we've continued to build out over the years. I would say in 2021, we grew it a little bit slower because a lot of components and cameras were on back order due to supply chain. We are looking to continue to expand that out. Our system on the situational awareness cameras is based on line of sight from camera to camera back to the police department. So we don't have to hardwire these cameras except for power. And so this network was built out in-house by John Cornell. If we had to use a private vendor, it would have been cost prohibitive for us to really do that, in my opinion, or really would have caused a big discussion on if you really want to invest six figures on a project like that, similar to some of our neighboring agencies that have done that with a vendor. But we are looking to build that out. One of the corridors we want to better cover is Pleasant Hill Road. But again, we really had to build out our system over time to get from the police department all the way out to Pleasant Hill Road, either through relays in the cameras or just having a relay site. But I will say this, we're very fortunate that several property owners have been supportive of us using the tops of their buildings as relay points to be able to stream this data. And again, for any of our situational awareness cameras or our Reconics cameras, we don't have someone at the PD viewing these live 24/7. They're a tool that once a crime is reported, we're proactively going to looking for the needle in the haystack, understanding we live in a metropolitan area. Our suspects can come from within and without, and the without is pretty vast in population. So again, that's been the value of that program. But thank you to the council. We've continued to have yearly funding year to year in the Crime Prevention Commission budget, allowed me to grow that, to maintain it. So I would not have any new asks of you. I think really, if you look at the upcoming fiscal budget, a lot of my asks will center around emergency preparedness based on our crime stats, based on the success of what we have in place, and based on the priorities of the council, understanding our public safety crime data is continuing to trend the way we want it to, while our concern for emergency preparedness continues to grow. Obviously, if that ever starts to shift, we can reevaluate that as a priority with you all. But that'll probably where my few small asks in the upcoming budget will probably mostly lie in emergency preparedness.
Great, thank you. Any other questions before we open it up for public comment? Okay, so Suzanne, members of the public, this is your time, and Suzanne will coordinate bringing you in.
Thank you, Mayor. The first person to speak is Mary Ann, followed by Abby Fateman. If anyone else would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now.
Oh, and then I do want to say that as members of the public, if you have questions, we will capture them and then have the chief answer them after so that we can keep the 3-minute and be equitable and fair for all public speakers. So welcome, Ms. Hoisington.
Thank you very much, Chief Aldrich. Thank you for all you do and your staff does for all of us here in Lafayette. I have a request that I hope will be easy for you to accomplish. There is a very convenient mailbox across the street from the police department. However, it's not very convenient when there is a police vehicle parked in front of it, and that is often the case. So my request is, could you please not park your vehicles in front of the mailbox? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I saw the chief, smile and do a thumbs up. So, okay. And our next speaker will be coming over now. And if anyone else would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand.
And the next speaker is Abby Fateman. And there are currently no other hands raised after this speaker.
Good evening. Well, sorry, the lighting's really bad. That's okay. I'm not going to be on very long. I just wanted to thank the police chief and other members of his team. You guys have all been very responsive when I've called about concerns, particularly around speeding in the Burton Valley area, where there's a lot of sensitivities around speeding. So I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you for the professionalism and responsiveness around those calls. So thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Anyone else who would like to speak on this item? I don't see any others. We did receive a written comment, or actually there was an email to a very small group, but I do want to share the message from it. And it was a thank you around all of the work that the chief does. It was an email that just, I know the chief I was CC'd on it to the chief from the business community, from the chamber, and just all of the partnership. And after reading the report, being very grateful, as we have shared to the chief, but for all the work that our police department does and with your leadership, and that being part of the team. And so just very grateful. And it was, I'm just going to say it was Jay Lipson, and I thought he said it very well, and that we're all lucky to be part of this team and all the great work that you do, Chief. So thank you.
I appreciate it. And just to wrap up, it definitely is a team effort. And in the beginning of my report, I had a letter to the community and to you all. This definitely is a team effort. We only do what we do with your support, both from the council and city staff to our community. We're designed to really police the 1%, not the 99, which by in effect means with cooperation of our community, with partnership with our community, is how we ensure public safety, traffic safety, emergency preparedness, all those topics. And so thank you. Thank you for, again, continuing to allow us to have the funding to be successful in these areas. I'm looking forward to 2022 and 2023. There's some great things coming up that I will come to you all in the next couple of months with some ideas. And so thank you again for your support. I do appreciate it. And I officially hit 4 years at the end of March. So thank you.
Well, happy
I'm not going anywhere. It was a monument time. So thank you.
No, I mean, so happy anniversary to you. And we're all grateful that you're spending this time and that you're not going anywhere. So thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And
all.
make sure to tell your entire team the same thing.
Yeah.
I will.
And
Thank you so
Councilmember
much.
Kwok, I saw you raise your hand.
Right. There was one more topic of discussion on Rocco, the canine, I just am recalling with my conversation recently. And that is, some members of the community have asked me, what does a community like Lafayette need with a canine? And I do remember you mentioning last week when I asked you this question that Rocco does actually perform duties, and there are times when an officer, it might be too dangerous or difficult for an officer to do, make an arrest, and then it's appropriate for a canine to be part of that. And he's actually made, what, a half a dozen arrests this year? Is that the case? So that he is actually providing an important function and part of the team, as I recall you explaining.
Yeah, so Rocco, our police dog has made 6+ apprehensions, which means the dog was utilized to apprehend the suspects so we get them into custody. Rocco's also been used many times for tracking. And when we first brought the idea of Rocco to the council, is whether it's an older person who maybe has some impairment due to age or other physical disabilities, it's reported as missing, whether it's a child. Rocco can be used to do a track or a trail so we can try to find that missing person more quickly. And so Rocco does serve not just as to catch the bad guys, but to help us look for those in our community that may be at risk. And in 2021, I think we only had to deploy a one-time quote on a bad guy, which is good. We don't want, he's not here just to go get bad guys. It's here to support our community, whether it's watching Officer White's back when he's out on patrol. The case I mentioned that Councilmember Quash referred to is actually happened in 2020, but Officer White was engaged in an altercation with an individual who had been reported trying to break into a home in the evening hours when it was dark outside. The individual began punching at Officer White. Officer White was able to pop the car door on his vehicle, and Rocco was able to come out, help Officer White apprehend that suspect while he was by himself on a residential street in the middle of the night or in the late evening hours. And so, the benefit for us, the support of our community, going back to that, is the purchase of Rocco and his state required training was all funded through the Lafayette Police Foundation and through donations from our community. So while the city does support us in funding, dog food and sort of some ongoing month-to-month training we need to do, the big bulk or the big cost that came with getting Rocco on the team was through support of community members who wanted to support us in that endeavor.
Thank you very much for the explanation.
Great. And any other comments? You heard Councilmember Kendall. Make sure that you also share with your whole team our gratitude and appreciation. Okay, so thank you very much.
Have a good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, you too. And we will move on to the next presentation, last but not least, from our Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission. Will provide their annual update and goals and accomplishments. And for those of you who, I know all the people I see on the screen right now read the whole presentation, but for those of you and the attendees who may not have, it is an exciting presentation. This is one busy group of people. So welcome. I will turn it over to Jonathan Katayanagi, and I see Joe Doherty, the chair, coming in, and one of the newest members, Justine Parmalee, coming in. I guess I'll let Jonathan or Joe introduce all of their folks. I'm just so excited to see and we can see your PowerPoint.
There we go. While we're in transition here, I thought I would share, I believe you're all seeing the chief and his team at our After School Awesome program. So in the 3 E's of enforcement, engineering, and education, this was the day he came out to the Lafayette Community Center with the Lafayette police staff, and they handed out little treats to the kids and stickers, educated them about bike safety and safety in general. Also got the drone up in the air. Rocco came to visit. I guess police can pull out all the stops. They might be the ones that are allowed to, but they did for the kids that day. So I felt moved to share that for everyone. Let's see, and I will switch over to our presentation, and I will pass over to our Parks, Trails, and Recreation Commission Chair, Joe Doherty, to start us off this evening. Thank you, Council.
Thank you, Jonathan, and thank you to the council for letting us present to you. It's been a while since we've been in front of you, so I'd also like to include previous chair Bellinger, who started the COVID years with us as our chair, and now I took over midway through. And it seems during that time, the PTR staff was very busy, actually probably more busy than normally we were. Everything from the Trails Subcommittee, working the trails that all of a sudden got lots of visitors when the outside was about all we could do, to the parks people that have been trying to add more park space wherever we can in Lafayette. And then our Community Center Foundation with Jonathan and his staff doing tremendous work all throughout the last 18 months. We have had some turnover in our commission, as you can kind of see by the pictures here. But the great thing is we're fully staffed, and it's a great group of people representing a bunch of different views and that contributing to Lafayette. So with that, I can say we've got Scott Nelson is our newest one up there on the upper left. And then Justine Parmalee, who's also here, going to present the Community Foundation or the Community Center business. We've got Grace Dixon and Frank Kakuro also have joined us during your time here. And then, of course, Carol Singer, Jeff Bellinger, Allison Hill, and Mark Poole, you'll remember as returning players on the PTR commission here. And Jonathan, I think we'll go forward. As I said, it's been a busy 2 years for us here on PTR. And as I said, we actually probably got busier during COVID. The staff at the PTR and the Community Center Foundation did a lot of work to help upgrade the community center itself. There was a ton of work done there on multiple projects. They've also been working with the Parks Subcommittee to help get our parks improvements up and running and keep the parks open when outside recreation was a lot, all that the kids could be doing. So we've done a lot there. The Parks Subcommittee has also been very busy trying to acquire more parkland, and we keep hearing about that every meeting that you guys are at, that the importance of parks in our areas, of downtown specific plan as well as the general plan. We've done work to step in for the community when the childcare systems was in panic during COVID. Jonathan and his staff stepped up to help. As I said, the trails have done their work on the trails as they've gotten more busy. And then the senior services has actually probably been the most busy with their pickleball. Anyone that's driven by the community center and the rink can see now that there is a huge activity going on at the rink with pickleball for all ages. And then, of course, we are going to continue with our Hamlin acquisition and getting that park up and developed as soon as we can with the Hamlin Committee, which Carol Singer also chairs there as well. So I'll turn it over to Carol now for the Park Subcommittee and let her do hers. Carol?
Yes, thank you. And thank you very much to the council for hearing our report again. We have been very busy. Some of our projects have been kind of slowed down with COVID due to staffing and contracting problems with COVID. One of our things we'd like to do, these are our goals for the coming year. Perhaps the biggest one is to develop the Fund 17 Parkland Acquisition and Development Plan. We are seeking a consultant to assist us with this development. This parkland should tie in with the Mount Diablo Corridor Plan. Then we'd like to work on our fees, particularly review field use fees and compare to other cities, which ties in with the city's fee study. And then another important one is it's an old one from many years. Identify specific sites for an off-leash dog park. There's a big group that's been using Stanley Field, and the group grew very large during COVID because there were no kids in school, no kids using the field. But now that they are back in school, there have been some problems, and the Stanley Field is off leash. It's posted now for no dogs, and they are giving citations for anyone on the field. So it's a big priority to find a dog park somewhere within Lafayette. Then another big project, complete the environmental review of the Lee Creekside Park project and move forward with that in conjunction with a new partnership that's developed with developing a park at the city-owned gazebo parking lot. That is moving forward. Then develop and adopt sustainability and safety standards that will guide park use. This is something we really need to do and work on. And of course, track the development of the general plan and new legislation coming along, and review the existing park plans to ensure they align with the general plan goals and laws. So that's a big plate. We hope we can fulfill some of it anyway for the next year. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
I'll
Carol.
pass it on to Jeff Bellinger, who's our Trails Subcommittee Chair.
Thank you. Good evening, Council and Mayor. So our list is a little shorter. The primary thing that we've been working on for quite a few years, and we've actually gotten a fair amount of progress, is on the Trails Master Plan and a map that would go with it. That always a lot easier to look at a map and see what's being proposed. It is, we're trying to do it by ourselves without a consultant. And I think as a result, it's taking a little longer than maybe otherwise. And as Carol mentions, having a shortage of staff has definitely cut into our ability to get certain projects done, but we're looking forward to some of that getting beefed up, and we'll have more opportunities to tackle some of these goals. The second one is one that we do regularly, and now that we're fully staffed and have 2 new people, relatively new on our Trails Subcommittee, Frank Kokoro is already out inspecting trails and enjoying it, and we look forward to our latest addition of Scott to also do that. And we've really done a good job of that, and the trails are actually in really good condition, which is great given all the use they've been getting during the COVID. It introduced a lot of people to Lafayette Trails. People always think of the regional park trail, the paved trail from Lafayette to Moraga, but that's actually not a city responsibility trail. Our trails tend to be little single track dirt trails up into the hills, and they're beautiful trails. And if anybody is not aware of them, you can always go to our website and find out, or contact any of us on the Trails Subcommittee. We'd be more than happy to take you on a tour. The third item is the construction of the Rose Lane Trail. A couple of years ago, we were able to get an easement from a private property owner that was on the route proposed for many, many years for the Rose Lane Trail. And during this past year, we were able to actually get a lot of help in constructing a major portion of that trail on the new easement. And that's been very successful. We still have some portions that need a little more construction work to make them easier to use on East Bay Regional Park District property, and need their approval to do any kind of construction improvements, steps, and primarily steps. Fourth, another project that we've been working on over the last couple of years is to make sure that we are fully documented all our trail easements that we have, and making sure they're all contained in an easily accessible location. And at one point, we had an opportunity to bring in an intern from one of the local schools to help, but unfortunately with COVID and all that, that is another victim of that, and hopefully we can get that resurrected. It's pretty important that if we're going to have trails showing up on our master plan as being our city easements, that we make sure that they really and true are. So the last thing is just basic thing, having to deal with trail signage. We've actually had a number of projects. Scouts have done a couple of signage projects, but some of the signs are getting pretty old and are starting to get displaced or can't see them so easily. So we've decided we need to do a thorough inventory and make sure that all our signs are appropriate and really help folks to find their way on the trails once they get to them. So with that, I will turn it over to our brand new Commissioner Justine, who is the chair of the Community Center Subcommittee.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. As you can see, the PTR Commission throws newbies into the deep end, but gives them the smallest slide. So some of the community center goals for fiscal year 22-23, work with staff to develop a plan for the community center playground redesign. I'm really excited about that one. Install a light timer and LED lights at the Lafayette Multi-Sport Rink. Use the American Rescue Plan Act funds, ARPA funds, to upgrade and expand HVAC systems around the community center, and replace the Lafayette Community Center roof. With that, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic back to Commissioner Singer for the Hamlin Park Subcommittee.
Carol, are you on mute?
Yeah.
Thank you. I was muted by the host. All right, this is a very exciting project that it's taken quite a while to get it going because of COVID and the work that needs to be done. So right now, they're working with getting a contract in place with Cal Engineering for the geotechnical study for the site. And when we get that, we can forward recommendations to the PTR Commission and City Council. Number 2, collect feedback through a public meetings. Now, we had a wonderful meeting, thanks to Lauren Herpich, who is a commission member at that time, where she set up we put marks on trees, and then there were recordings, and you could press on your cell phone, and when you got to the marked tree, it would tell you what you were looking at. And it was a wonderful tour and very well received by the public as to what it would all be like when the trail is finished through it. But we need to hire consultants after the geotech study to assist with preparing the Hamlin Park master plan. And basically it will be a trail through there. There will be no play equipment or any kind of thing. It'll be a trail area, but it will be a very exciting nature park. So we look forward to that. Thank you very much. Any questions?
We'll turn it back to the council.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Thank you for removing the slide presentation. Thank you all very much. And just again, for those of you who have not read the extensive report, the commission did a great job of summarizing and encapsulating all of the work that is going on or that has happened over the last couple of years. And so I want to thank Jonathan and the staff and all of you for all the work that you've been doing. And Justine, I know that from being able to be part of the interview team that you had been involved with the Lafayette Community Center work before. And so I know that you jumped right in and as you said, into the deep end. And so thank you very much for doing that. So are there any questions from any of my colleagues? I don't see any hands being raised right now. So the report and the staff report and presentation were very thorough. Suzanne, may we move to public comment? And
certainly. The first speaker on this item is David Clark. And if anyone else would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now.
and welcome back.
Thank you. This is quick, but Chair Doherty and commissioners, I don't want you to sell yourself short. I think there's at least, there's obviously an extensive report, but I think there's one thing that's not on there, and that is the rain garden project that we're working on together with respect at First and Golden Gate. So it's kind of a big deal. It's not finished yet. So I suppose it could be on both lists, you know, the past and looking forward to the future. So thank you for that. I thought I'd point that out because that's a plus. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And thank you and McCreek's committee for your work on that. I see another public speaker.
The next speaker is Lauren Herpick. And if anyone else would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature now. There are currently no other speakers after this speaker.
Welcome
Hi,
back.
Council. Thank you. Hi, Council. Hi, PTR Commission. So good to see everybody again. First, I just want to thank Carol for the lovely shout out regarding the Hamlin audio tour. That really was one of my favorite things that I got to do as a PTR Commissioner. And also during COVID, it truly was like one of those great projects you got to work on. So if you need a tour, I'm your girl. But a couple of things to note. Based off of what Chair Doherty said at the beginning, we really saw the need for every member of our community to take advantage of our outdoor spaces in Lafayette. It's a reason why so many of us live here. I feel so fortunate that we have amazing trails that are walkable to our house, and a lot of people, a lot of neighborhoods throughout the city can walk, get outside. And, you know, and especially with kids, you know me, kids are my focus. And so I think as we look forward and looking at these goals and accomplishments of the PTR, as City Council, I would just challenge you, please support the PTR's priorities as much as you can. You know, we, as a commissioner, I know we went through Fund 12, Fund 17 plans, making priorities for the city. And so as the city is creating these larger scale plans with the general plan, I know our new mission statement with the housing plan, please make sure that parks are always in the center of your brains and your minds when you are making these plans. We need more parks, as the commission has stated during in many of the reports and in their goals and accomplishments. We are already behind on our parkland per resident ratio, and we need to increase that. And so I would say, you know, having more parks is a priority. It's always fantastic to see people wanting things, but we actually need to help start getting them done too. And that's not just also looking at acquiring property, but it's also looking at the property that we have and the zoning in which it's in, and making sure that our zoning and our ordinances actually allow for parks and play and recreation to happen. I spent last summer in Utah, and I was always very impressed by Utah, the state of Utah, and especially Park City's mentality of they're preserving their nature and environment, but it's also for the enjoyment of all of us as well. And I think that's something I'd love for our PTR and our city council to always just strive and focus on. So great work, everybody.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council members for the speaker? I forgot to ask that the last time. Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other speakers who would like to speak to this item? And actually, I think that I wasn't asking because we're in presentation mode. So anyway, so any council member comments or questions following public comment? Vice Mayor Andori.
Just to say, it's great to see a full commission and to see everybody, all the new people have jumped in. Everybody's working hard. It just, the work that you do is so important. I think there's no danger of any council member forgetting about how much we need parks and how that's a top priority. So I really look forward to working with you in this next year to help you accomplish your goals for the year.
Thank you. Councilmember Kwok.
Agreed. Well done. Great written report. And I liked how you all got a chance to rotate through and just show your shining colors and all your enthusiasm. So thank you for just the action-packed things that you're working on. I have a tiny question for Justine. Since she's the newbie on the team, I'll just call her out here, and my old friend. On the roofing that's being contemplated, do you happen to know if that's going to be a metal roof that will match the Jennifer Russell building, or is it going to be an asphalt shingle that's going to replace the roof that you were talking about on the community center?
So I am so new that I believe I will defer to staff on this one and ask Jonathan to step in.
It will be somewhere in between. One of the reasons we're having to redo the roof at the community center was the initial application was designed for us incorrectly, and really we've gotten about half the life out of the existing roof. During that process, we went back and fought the bond and did what we could on that roof project, but we have had a sinking fund in place to restore that roof at the community center. But the current application actually has more rooms leaking in the community center than not leaking right now. So we are in a place, though we haven't reached what should be the full life of the roof at that building, we are in a place where we desperately need to step in and replace that for the building.
How old is the current roof?
Let's see, we have, I believe, 12 years on that one right now.
It's pretty young. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Kendall.
Yes, thank you so much. I want to echo what Vice Mayor Anduri said, and definitely we all hear loud and clear that we hear it often and from all sides that parks need to be a priority. And I feel the commitment, from this council in that endeavor. So thank you guys for working so hard.
Thank you. And with that, I would also echo that if you ever feel that this is not a priority and you're not being heard and you need to come back and talk to us, please do so. But I think that you've heard tonight that we very much support the work that you're doing and appreciate the goals. As Carol said, very long list of goals, and we support you and have faith that you will get through them. And we look forward to working with you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And with that,
I think Carol has a question.
Okay. Or is she waving goodbye, or do you have a comment, Carol? Commissioner Singer.
Yes, thank you for letting me make this. I know I speak for all the commissioners when I give a shout out to our staff, Jonathan in particular, and the other members of our staff. They are the pilots that guide everything, and they know all the waves and where all the sharks are and all the good islands. And we are extremely grateful to them all. And the city is very lucky to have such a staff at PTR. Thank you, Jonathan.
Yes, we are. Thank you, Commissioner Singer. That were very well said. Very, very, very well said. And the staff, I think you saw, you got a standing ovation. So thank you all. And thank you again to the commissioners.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we will move on to the consent calendar. And before we ask for a motion or go to public comment, are there any council members who would like to remove anything from the consent calendar for discussion at the appropriate time? I see shaking of heads. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment on an item on the consent calendar, in which case we would pull it and move it to later on the agenda? And I don't see any hands raised. So do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar? Vice Mayor Anduri.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Great.
And I'll second.
Council Member Candell. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri and a second by Council Member Candell. I will conduct the roll call vote. Council Member Candell.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri,
Aye.
and I am an aye. So we have unanimously approved the consent calendar. I did want to take a point of personal privilege and just briefly comment on one item, considering we just had the presentation from the Parks, Trail and Recreation Committee. And just to say that it is very exciting to have just approved the final exception of the construction contract for the Brook Street Park improvements. And I know that there is a ribbon cutting coming up soon, I believe April 18th. And so I just wanted to say congratulations. Okay, so now we will move on to agenda item number 7, which is old business. And we are going to look at and hear a report from the staff, but I want to first turn it over to our city attorney, Mala Subramanian. She and I talked about this today, but I want to turn it over to her to provide an update to us.
Thank you, Mayor Geringer. I mentioned this at the last meeting, but you might recall that the last time we talked about AB 2923 and rezoning the BART parcel, Councilmember Kwok recused himself out of an abundance of caution. He was in the process of obtaining an opinion from the FPPC. That opinion has come in, and the FPPC has determined that he does not have a conflict as it relates to his residence and its location to the BART parcel. So he will be participating tonight, and we just wanted to update the public as well as the council again on that new determination by the FPPC.
Great, thank you. And thank you again to Councilmember Kwok and to our city attorney for the research and work that you did to, as pointed out, to make sure with an abundance of caution that you can participate. And we're all glad that you were able to. So now I will turn it over to Greg Wolf, our planning director.
Thanks very much. And I'm pleased to turn it over to Jean Iceberg, who is helping us with our AB 2923 implementation.
Okay, thank you, Greg, and good evening, Mayor.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Good evening, council members. I have a very short presentation. This is really simply an update. As you may recall, February 28th, the council directed staff to begin preparation of draft implementing zoning and objective design standards for consideration by the commission and the council, and to return to the city council with an update on March 28th tonight. So since that time, the General Plan Advisory Committee met on the 15th of March and recommended to the Planning Commission that the housing element update include the AB 2923 BART-owned parcels in the sites inventory. Also in your packet, since we last met, we received a letter from BART describing the process for moving the city within the BART TOD work plan. You may recall that right now Lafayette is listed as a city that would be anticipated to have TOD development after the year 2030. And so this letter describes how to move up on that priority list, in particular for cities looking to list the BART-owned parcels in their housing element sites inventory. And so as we discussed last time, the city would need to demonstrate this through identifying local support for TOD, identifying market readiness for TOD, as well as support for infrastructure needs, particularly around replacement parking. So in the meantime, we've been developing the draft standards. We'll plan to go to the Planning Commission on April 18th, and then we'll be coming to council with those draft standards in in May or in early June. So that's my update, and we're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So any questions from colleagues? Councilmember Kendall.
I saw Vice Mayor Andrea raising her hand. Do you want to go first? No. Okay. Yeah, a couple questions. I know that GPAC and planning did put through their recommendations, and I know that, and I'm just going to say this as a statement of, I've spoken to a lot of people about the BART lots, and most everybody has kind of the same vision in their head. These are people that support development, and these are people that are resistant to development. And everybody kind of the people that I've spoken to are thinking 3 stories, nothing too inconsistent with the rest of our town. And the issue there that we know is that that's not what AB 2923 says. And so are there still opportunities for us to do things like an overlay district where maybe we don't actually do the upzone, or can we put in developmental guidelines that would be more consistent with the rest of our city and still, be within what we can do within the law?
So in terms of the actual zoning standards, whether the city chooses to rezone or the statutory standards go into effect on July 1st, those standards need to state that you can do up to 5 stories, up to 75 units an acre. However, this is a market-driven process. A developer will be responding to requests for proposals issued by BART in coordination with the city. And it's not inconceivable that someone would want to do a 3-story development, townhomes, which is a very popular model. So that's first of all, a possibility. Second, in terms of more transitions, something we talked about last time is that we could identify standards where 3 stories were appropriate potentially at a transition to single family neighborhoods, across the street. But that would probably require allowing some higher densities in the interior of the site or towards the BART tracks as a way to make sure that we can still meet that 75 unit per acre threshold.
Okay, thank you. I'll wait for other questions.
Okay, Vice Mayor Anduri.
I just want to confirm that we are pursuing, or we're going down the road of option 2 on page 10 of the February 28th report. Page 10 says, for immediate consideration to meet the July 1st, 2022 deadline, 1, do nothing option, or 2, density, height, and parking standards. The city should proactively establish development standards. I just want to confirm we're heading down that road, correct?
That's right. And so that's just essentially the statutory minimum. The development standards, parking, height, density, and then the addition to that is the extension of objective design standards based on the current ones that exist in downtown.
Yeah, then the follow-up to that, there are a number of tasks to be undertaken, and obviously they can't be undertaken by June 30th. But is it safe to assume that staff is considering how these next steps, like other development standards, master plan scenarios, design standards, infrastructure and transportation, how that might relate to the Mount Diablo downtown specific plan we're thinking about? And if so, will you cover that? And I guess this is a question for Greg in your April 11th staff report.
Those aspects we do anticipate being part of the corridor or downtown specific plan update. And to what degree they're fully scoped out in detail for the 11th, I think remains to be seen. I think it is going to be detailed out over the next series of weeks. I can't fully promise the 11th.
Yeah, understood. But just to confirm, we are on track in terms of timing to make a June 30th zoning change.
We are. It'll require, we're kind of at a minimum timeline at this point. So if for some reason something were to turn or be unanticipated, we might eke past that. I don't think that's a fatal flaw to the effort. But yes, we are on track for that.
Okay, Councilmember Kwok.
I had a question about the March 7th BART letter to us. As I read it, with great interest and concern, because we are, as the letter said, categorized in the long-term part of the plan, which was outside the window of the RENA cycle. And yet, the GPAC is recommended and is counting on those to be included in the RENA numbers, and it's before the Planning Commission now. But this letter has just come out on March 7th, so it's in reading that, it seems like in order for our city to be able to have a chance of counting those hundreds of units, that we have to take several big steps to bring this from the long-term plan into the midterm plan. And I was trying to understand the timelines and all the steps that we would have to do as a city. And Jean just rattled off the list of writing the letter of support, doing the infrastructure planning, and especially they said they didn't really prefer a structured parking lot, meaning multiple tiered parking. So how else would we put parking? And so on. There just seemed to be quite a number of steps. And I'm just curious whether, as part of the work of the staff, is that on a timeline so that it sort of coincides with Planning Commission and City Council, so that if we're counting on those big numbers to be in here, but then we don't manage to get from the long term back to the midterm, then where do all those hundreds of units go? Somewhere else in the city? Are we going to be really off track by the fall?
So there are multiple steps to be able to ultimately have a certified housing element that includes the BART parcels as opportunity sites. And you're correct that the GPAC is recommending that the BART parcels, which were subject to AB 2923 and subject to the 75 dwelling units break or 5-story TOD standards, and one of the reasons that Lafayette's RENA allocation is as high as it is because of that transit node. So yes, there are multiple steps that need to happen. Are they on path to happen during Planning Commission and City Council before we submit our first draft to HCD? No, I believe it will take longer than that, but we believe that those are achievable before the January 31 deadline for certification. So, and we're coordinating a meeting with BART to flesh out additional details on how the process would work, sort of in a nuts and bolts fashion, to solicit BART amendment to their TOD work plan. That'll happen later this week or next week. And we'll have more information then. So the March 7 letter is consistent with what we've been told previously by BART staff and what we've said throughout the general plan advisory committee meetings and planning commission meetings on the RENA allocation. So yes, we have our work cut out for us, but there's a path forward, and provided that BART is willing to amend their plan. And I think that the information in BART's March 7th letter is wholly consistent with what we've been told to date and what we've represented, but I think that it emphasizes on the final page of the letter on page 3 items in bold, and that is kind of my takeaway from the letter, is that those are emphasized in bold, and those are that BART will consider availability of local funding to support development, especially affordable housing, as a key factor in advancing projects. Secondly, that parking and access solutions that maximize development on highly desirable land near station entrances, and minimizing the number of structured parking stalls because they are costly. And so if there is a kind of a need and desire to have more stalls available to patrons of the system, then bringing outside funding sources. And so BART, probably unsurprisingly, is not flush with funds to do the things that are mentioned in the letter. And so it would very much be a partnership. The city would need to bring what funding we can, and then seek out additional funding from other means as well. So hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you for the explanation. That's very helpful.
And thank you, Councilmember Kwok, for asking about the letter. That was my question also that I was going to ask, but Vice Mayor Andrew.
Okay, I'm going to get to a question, but first I want to point out what's would be not a surprise, but we're in a worst of all worlds scenario in that arena number has been given to us based upon our having the transit node in our town. And at the same time, looking at the letter, and we knew this before we got the letter, we may be told that we can't count those opportunity sites because it's unlikely we're going to develop them during this cycle. So our number has been bumped up because we'll put development there. And then we've been told, no, you can't count them. We could be told we can't count them because we can't do it right away. So my question is, has a thought been given to, going to our legislative representatives and discussing a way out of this? Because it's whether you support development on the BART lots or not, it's patently unfair to be given a number that's proportionally higher than surrounding communities based on a BART lot, and then not being able to count the units there. So have we considered, or should we just talk about this after the public comment, what we do in terms of seeking a legislative solution?
I know you asking that question of staff. Great, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a question for staff. We've not contemplated seeking a legislative solution to it, but we're happy to explore that further and discuss it with Townsend or at the council's pleasure. So we're happy to pursue that if that's the direction.
So I have a follow-up question. Hold on, Councilmember Kendall. So if we decided to do that as a council, we would still, based on timelines, would we need to continue moving the process forward to meeting our allocations and getting our plan submitted to HCD?
I believe we would be obligated to do so. We could find out further the timelines for an actual bill to pass, but I think it would be prudent to continue on the path which we're currently on, in addition to any seeking of a legislative cure.
Yeah, and the timelines are, thank you, Greg. And Councilmember Kendall.
Right, so to get to Vice Mayor's question, the distribution of units is done by ABAG, and we appealed based on the BART stations being in a very high fire hazard severity zone, which in their own process was supposed to be omitted. And they went back and changed their own rules in order to get ours in. And so I'm not seeing any possible fact, and we're out of the time period where appeals like that could be done. We didn't include that as part of our appeal, that we won't be able to include it in our housing element. I don't know if they could have cared, but unfortunately, I think that's how that process works. But let me get to a question. Is there,
move us back to questions, and this will be a good discussion after.
But in that, along that same thread, is there another path for us in order to find out if we can include it in our housing element without making all this prior investment into making this happen. And that's more of a direction that I would say would have some potential, is to show HCD, could we do this? That we will intend to do these things, but kind of put it in our housing element first and test it to see if HCD even buys into this concept before we put a bunch of money and time and effort into it. Is that a possible path?
It never hurts to ask. I think what we've been told by HCD staff is to expect not one, but two 90-day review periods, and that they're not able to provide preliminary reviews. And so we can certainly ask and see if they can give us an opinion on this before making the time and monetary investment in doing it. And if they're unable to or unwilling to give us a feedback or an opinion on it, then I think we stay on the same course. But it never hurts to ask.
Okay. Any other questions, Councilmember Kendall, or follow up on that? Any other questions from any of my colleagues before I move to public comment, and then we will come back for discussion? Okay, so this is the time for public comment on this item. Suzanne, thank you, or Ms. Erla, thank you for coordinating, bringing the public over.
You are welcome. If any members of the public would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now.
And as we're doing that, I would note that we did receive public comment. There was public comment in the public comment item on the website with this agenda item. And
Mayor, I do not see any hands raised.
I don't either. So I will bring it back to us. I do want to thank Jean and Greg for the staff report for the update. And I did have a question, Councilmember Kendall, on thank you for the update and that the distributions of units were done by ABAG. I know that one suggestion, and Vice Mayor Anduri noted that, one that was also in our public comment in one of the letters that came to us, was council working with our legislative representatives to have us not, at least I think I saw it there, maybe I'm imagining it, but I believe what the public comment said was to speak to our representatives to have it not apply because the BART station is there, but now we're not in the line of BART's project for outside of this cycle. So can we not have to do this right now, I think is how I interpreted the letter. What I think is that we still have to, it doesn't change anything on AB 2923. I'm stumbling a little bit here, but Councilmember, I'm going to go back. Councilmember Kendall, you had said, can we go to HCD, have a preliminary review so we don't spend a lot of money doing something? I wasn't sure what the something was that you were talking about we would spend a lot of money on. Are you suggesting we don't work on complying before July 1st proactively with meeting the requirements of AB 2923 and the design standards and all of that?
All of that.
On the off chance, thanks, on the off chance that we're not going to be able to count them.
Right.
Okay. So I think that I'm still, and thank you, Vice Mayor Anduri, for reminding us, and the public that we had chosen to move forward with, I believe, option 2, which was going forward with proactively. Go ahead, Vice Mayor Anduri, that we had moved forward with asking staff to move forward with complying and meeting the requirements of AB 2923 and working on the standards. So Vice Mayor Anduri,
But we hadn't decided to do that. We had asked staff to move ahead, but we had not made the decision to do that.
Oh, okay. I thought that we had asked them to come back. I mean, to continue moving forward with that.
We in order to not lose, if we ultimately decided to do it, so we could do it before June 30th.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. Thank you. So I do think that the irony that we could, and I listened to the whole Planning Commission on their first review of the opportunity sites, that Vice Mayor Anduri stated it very well, that it is it would be, we don't know yet if, they will turn it down, if HCD will turn it down, if we're really actively working with BART to work through the issues, move ourselves up. It would be ironic, hypocritical, all of those things if they turned us down when we're trying to proactively move forward, meeting AB 2923 requirements, meeting our RENA allocation requirements that are based on the fact that we have this potential property to put, so many of those units on that resulted in our increase. I don't know legislatively, but I'm open to, looking at how we talk to our legislators, if in fact we're all, this is kind of ahead of the game too, because the opportunity sites hasn't come to us yet, but I know we're all following it. But if we submit a plan to HCD, our first round, hopefully final round of our housing element update, and they don't approve it because we're not far along with the BART, I would say at that time, we would have that conversation with our legislators to maybe go to bat for us. I don't know that it stops us in the process that we're going forward with right now. So I'm going to stop for a minute because I'm got myself turned around here, I think. But basically, it's the sort of long and short. The short of it is that I think we have to continue moving forward proactively through the process. Vice Mayor Anduri.
Yeah, I agree completely with that. And I wasn't suggesting that we would stop and wait for a legislative solution. I don't think that's possible. I think we have to recognize that there are two things going on here. There's AB 2923 and the need to upzone, and then there's the housing element and the RENA allocation. So I'm assuming at this point, and it may not happen, I don't want to prejudge what the Planning Commission will do, but since GPAC has a unanimous, 10 yeses, 1 abstention, voted to identify opportunity sites at the BART station, I'm assuming that's going to come to us. And I'm assuming that if it does, then we need to move vigorously to put ourselves in a position to demonstrate to HCD that it is possible for us to make a great start, do whatever we can to start building within the 8-year period. I know at least one of the public comments we got, and I know there are others who would wish we could sit back or just let them come to us. That's not going to work. I think we have to make a strong effort to show HCD that we're serious about developing. It may not end up being 5-story buildings, as was discussed earlier. It may be something other than that. We'll see, but we have to move forward in doing everything we can to show HCD that we're serious about doing it, which may include helping them. One of the things they point out is they have a lack of staff in order to bring things in. We might consider using part of our redevelopment funds that are now in the housing fund for staff for that project. There's a number of things we just need to think about. So we move forward on that. But at the same time, I think when we meet with HCD, in addition to making our case for the opportunity sites, I think we need to make HCD aware of how we got here with this large RENA number and what it would do to us then if they don't agree that the BART sites are opportunity sites. But I think at the same time, and I hadn't thought this through, so I'm just throwing it out there. I think we have to start now in having conversations with our legislators just to make them aware of this fundamental problem that we're facing, rather than waiting until August, if HCD would come back, that's going to be too late. I think we need to start now to bring in our legislators. But I think the big question for us, and we don't have to do it tonight, but we will be faced with it, is whether we move forward vigorously to persuade HCD that we are serious about building on the BART ones.
Councilmember Kendall.
So I unfortunately very much disagree. I think going to our legislatures is going to do nothing. I think we work as hard as we possibly can to get that constitutional amendment on the 2024 ballot, and we'll bring land use and zoning back to cities, and then we'll be in charge of our BART parking lot. If we don't do that, I know it's optimistic to think that we'll get the 75 per acre, but with a density bonus, that's 7 to 9 stories. That's the reality, right? That the market is just as likely to go in that direction as it is to the 3 stories. That's for sure. Because we have no money, we have no say in it. We can't buy them off to go smaller. And so I vigorously disagree. I think a much more tactical approach to this is to find out if HCD is going to take it. Because if we vigorously go in this direction, we can't count it. We allocate 2,000 units elsewhere in our city and didn't even need to. This whole thing takes a completely different course, right? It's a completely different conversation in our housing element if we can't use these sites. And I think we have to at least try, because we may get development there on top of the development everywhere else if we pursue the direction you're intending to do, Carl. And so I disagree. I think we need to show HCD that we want to use these sites and tell them what we're going to do, but don't act on it. Because if we act on getting us onto the list for 2030 and we can't count them, well, we're going to get that too, right? And so I think it's tactically a far better, effort is to find out from HCD whether or not we can include them. Because if we can't, it's a completely different discussion. And we don't want BART to put us back on their list until after 2030, right? That's how I read this situation.
So I have a question, but go ahead, Vice Mayor Andrews.
Yeah, we may be
Kendall was
talking
responding to you.
Yeah, we may be talking about the same thing. If we basically go into HCD without doing anything more than an upzoning, I'm fairly sure.
With a plan, and tell them, we've got this letter. We know what we have to do.
Oh, no. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we're talking about, that's all we're going to be able to do before we go to HCD.
Oh, okay. That's
so
my question.
We have a plan, because if they say no, we're going to get if they say no to us on the BART sites, then we have a huge problem.
Exactly.
Then we're going to have to upzone downtown. So I'm saying we need to go in as strong as we can in July and keep moving down that path.
But let's wait until the first 90-day period. So we submit to
wait for-
HCD. We
wait for
submit
what?
to we wait for HCD to respond to our housing element before going tactical with BART.
No, well, if we do,
We have
do-
90 days. So we
we-
submit in like June, right? May, June, our housing element. We wait the 90 days until we decide to go, where they tell us that if we do these things, then we get to use them. But don't pursue those things with BART until we get HCD's things.
So go ahead, Vice Mayor Andrew.
unless we pursue it with BART, I don't think we have any hope.
But we can tell them we're going to tell them to do that anyway. But I'm saying let's wait for the 90 days for them to respond to it, unless we get a predetermination, right? I'm assuming we're not going to get that because they said they're not going to give them to us. Wait until we get our first housing element back before we go on to that bigger thing. Because if we don't, if they say no, even though we're trying to do the right things, then we've really gone overboard, right?
No, because we can pull back at that point. I don't think we need to discuss this tonight beyond where we are now, because we don't need to make this.
But I think that they want direction from us, right? How hard we push on those key items of maximize development, minimize number of parking stalls, all those things with BART.
No, I mean, I'll defer to Jean and to Greg, but I think what we're talking about now is the upzoning, the 2923 upzone. And I think they have enough direction to move forward on that. Once we get the decision of the Planning Commission, then we can resume this discussion.
I have one more question on that, though. If the initiative gets on the ballot and it passes, if the state upzoned our BART parking lots instead of us, if we create like an overlay district or something, it's not a change in zoning by our city, then we would still be allowed to not have it be upzoned, and then we could choose the zoning we want there. That's a legal question for Mala.
And I
Yeah,
thought we,
yes.
Go ahead, Mala.
Oh, sorry, Mayor Geringer. Yes, Councilmember Kendall, I do think I'll need to work with Greg and Jeannie, but I suspect it may be some overlay, given the comments that we had at our last meeting about if AB 2923 lapses or expires, or if the constitutional amendment passes, that we want our current zoning to stay in place. I suspect we would do an overlay zone that addresses that. So if it goes away, we have our base zoning, which is our current zoning. Otherwise, we have this zoning that we were required to do, or otherwise it would have gone into effect. So
Excellent.
I suspect that's where we're headed, but I did see the comment letter, and I'll be coordinating with staff on that.
Thank you.
So the question that I have, and I thought we had determined this last time, and maybe I missed it, but that whether we do it or they do it, if it all goes away, then it has basically the same effect and it goes back to our zoning. But that's only if we proactively put in an overlay. And when we come back, so when this goes to the Planning Commission, because we're going through with our process, when this goes to the Planning Commission, will there be that discussion of putting, or before it comes back to us, that if we proactively before July 1st say that we're going to comply with AB 2923, we're going to do it, not just let it happen, let the state do it. We'll have all of the pieces that we need for that, because my understanding before was that if the constitutional amendment passes, that it overrides or allows the city to override SB 330, the AB 2923, and the zoning goes back to where it was, so that there's not the downside risk and we still comply, and we're able to put in some things that make us more proactive in setting the standards than letting the state set it. Is that correct? We'll be getting all those pieces, but go ahead, Mala.
No, I think we can bring back the pieces. I think the one thing if we are pushing to have this parcel be considered as an opportunity site, that puts a wrinkle into the issue, because if we then want to unwind it and go back to our base zoning, and we've moved forward as an opportunity site with this many units, you can see how we'd have to have an incredibly large buffer or otherwise upzone elsewhere to accommodate that change. So it's just something to factor in.
Right.
And that's one of those reasons why maybe we shouldn't do this before we understand whether we can do it or not. It's one of those other wrinkles. It's like, let's test it,
But I think we can continue to move forward with having it go forward. So we as a council, planning commission can look at it, come forward with a recommendation, and we're still queued up to make a decision about whether or not to do that. And we planning commission has a couple more meetings. I listened all day Sunday to their meeting, and they have a couple more meetings to look at the opportunity sites. I'm just saying that, and having staff continue to move forward with the AB 2923 piece and having us get these questions answered as we're going forward, so we're set up for both of them, is what I'm hoping that the direction that we're giving to staff and what we're doing. Vice Mayor Andoury.
Just a reminder that the Planning Commission, there's two separate things on, and the Planning Commission is with 2923. So we're not waiting to hear any.
No, I know. I was talking about the opportunity sites, that they're going through that process. Staff is, going through, although staff is going back with draft zoning and objective standards at their April 18th meeting, right? So there really are, both of those things will be in the queue. I see nodding of the head. So Planning Commission will see that again before it comes back to us and for AB 2923. So I just wanted to make sure, and I think that's the direction, part of the direction that staff wanted. And then we can get these questions answered, because 2024 is a couple of years away and we have these deadlines before we get there. And there are a lot of what ifs, like, can the legislature overturn it? Can 2024, I just want to make sure that we're not missing opportunities for us to be proactive in all of this, the opportunity sites. And I appreciate Councilmember Candell making sure we're looking at all of these, but I do think that we're on a track, and we'll continue to have these discussions when the items come back to us. So Greg and Jean, do you have additional questions or comments, Mala, that you would like to get us to weigh in on? Okay.
No, our goal is to give the council as many options and have the stage set for you to make the decisions when the time comes. So we'll have those prepared, but you'll ultimately have the choice when the time comes.
Okay, so any other comments, Councilmember Kwok, Councilmember Candell?
No, thank you. Thank you for all you guys are doing.
Yeah. And this, I mean, we have some big discussions coming up, and others are working very hard on it right now. The GPAC has worked for a very long time, and the Planning Commission. I wasn't able to, well, we were all in a council meeting on the night they first heard it. And so I encourage all of us to listen to that, because they're struggling with it as well. So thank you, Greg and Jean. And we will move on to the next item on the agenda. I think it's more old business, and we will invite Thomas, I believe Thomas and Tracy over. The next item on our agenda is from our ARPA subcommittee, and Thomas Myers, our economic development manager, to look at some additional requests and options. And I see it's Thomas Myers. It's his real name. We got the naming, the naming fixed as we were all working. Welcome.
Welcome. Going to share my screen with you if I can figure out how to do that once again.
We have faith.
I'm glad you do.
We see your screen and it looks like you're in a PDF mode. So you're going to come, or Word or something. So anyway, there you go. We see the first screen or the first slide.
Resume share. There we go. Okay, good evening, Council and Mayor and Vice Mayor. Thomas Myers, the Economic Development Manager for the City of Lafayette. And I apologize in advance. My internet connection has not been very good tonight, but I'm still I'm here to give you some updates and some funding recommendations on our continuing American Rescue Plan Act recommendations. First, an update on our Lafayette Shop Local e-card pilot program. Can you see the second screen?
Yes, we can.
Sorry,
Okay.
yes, thank you.
Thank you, thank you. So to date, and this was as of this morning, our e-card purchases are over $39,000, which includes both the purchaser e-cards as well as the bonus e-cards that the city is sponsoring. And of this 39,000, this includes a little over 20,000 in ARPA funds that we've used. And of that 20,000 in ARPA funds, we're about at $19,150 for the bonus cards and about $1,400 for the fees that we have agreed to pay for card purchasers. And that leaves us a little over $400 remaining in our ARPA funds out of our original $30,000 allocation. The 9 businesses that are participating in the program are listed there. I'll briefly give you a chance to look at those, but they're also on the website. So we have 9 out of the 11 possible slots for the pilot program, and I am working on filling those other 2 slots as we speak. Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about introducing you to the second phase of the program, where we're requesting an additional $20,000, and some of those program requirements include a brick and mortar commercial storefront for new businesses in the program. We're going to try and continue to have a wide program variety of businesses all throughout the business quarter, both on Mount Diablo Boulevard and off of Mount Diablo Boulevard. New businesses must still have the ability to process e-card transactions. We want to maintain the $5,000 total benefit limit per business, which was originally recommended by the focus group of businesses that suggested that limit. We also want to maintain the buy one, get one ratio, and we want to continue to maintain the card purchaser subsidy fees. And we also want to maintain, finally want to maintain the purpose of our opera funding, which includes supporting the economic recovery of our small businesses in Lafayette who have had a downturn as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide is about our outdoor retail sales and dining program, for which in your packet is resolution 2022-20. It is a resolution that codifies the 1-year pilot program through March 31st of next year to extend our current arrangements to allow continued outdoor retail sales and dining in Lafayette. This will include the continued relaxation of the sign and parking ordinances, which will allow A-frames, banners, and the use of private lots for both retail sales and outdoor dining activity, and includes the partial temporary closure of public streets, sidewalks, and on-street public parking spaces. And the details of that are included in your resolution. I'm gonna try to enlarge this as much as I can, but this is a current map of where our no parking zones are located in red. It also includes in green where we are now, the streets are blocked off where we're not collecting parking fees currently. And the areas in dark blue include the sidewalk areas where there are currently outdoor dining and some retail areas along Mount Diablo Boulevard on the north and south side, as well as the area which is known as Plaza Way, is the official name of that street, which leads me to a amendment to tonight's resolution. Number 5 in your resolution, which states we're allowing the temporary use of sidewalk areas for outdoor retail sales and dining activities through March 31st next year at the following locations. The area just south of Lafayette Plaza, that little area where you turn in off Moraga Road is actually called Plaza Way. So I want to amend one portion of the resolution to state to the area, the sentence is crossed out in red. I want to replace that with the sentence below, which says the south side of the 3500 block of Plaza Way between Moraga Road and Golden Gate Way. And amending the resolution will be our continuing way when we're adding new areas in the city for both retail sales and outdoor dining on sidewalks and in the public right of way. We will continue to amend the current resolution to reflect any new areas that the subcommittee decides should participate in the program. So our recommendations for tonight, number 1, including approving an additional $20,000 in ARPA funds for the Lafayette Shop Local e-card program to continue our assistance to Lafayette businesses. And number 2, adopt resolution 2022-20 as amended to allow the relaxations of the sign and parking ordinance for A-frames, banners, the use of private lots for outdoor activity, and the temporary partial closure of streets, specifically on-street public parking spaces and public streets for outdoor dining and for retail sales through the pilot year of March 31st, 2023. And one additional thing that I want to add in terms of our ARPA funding, the organizations in Lafayette that have either received or have been sent their ARPA allocations as approved by council include the Lafayette Partners in Education, or LPI, the Lafayette Chamber of Commerce, the Lafayette War Veterans, as well as Community Foundation. And we are all available for questions. Stop share. Back to normal.
Thank you. Very, very well done. And our faith was well placed. You were able to pull that up and share and provide that great update and report. Vice Mayor Andori, did you have anything to add or any clarifications?
Nope, nothing other than to thank Thomas for that great report and for all the great work he's doing. And I just want to note, if you look at the map of where the stores and restaurants are that are part of the program, you'll see a nice line going from west to east. So there's great geographic diversity in the participants. Great,
thank you. Any questions from council members? Councilmember Candell and then Councilmember Clark.
Yeah, great. Thank you guys. A lot of work done since you came and spoke to us. And congratulations on the success of the e-cards. Are we going to be soliciting more businesses if we give you $20,000 more dollars, or is that going to be the same businesses?
We are going to allow another, I believe I'm going to say it's either 9 or 10 businesses, all depending on how much the e-card purchasing fees are for individuals that are buying. The fees vary all depending on what type of, the size of the card that you buy, whether it's $10, $25, $50, or $100. Those fees are different, and I want to make sure that we have enough money to pay those fees to add additional businesses, so that we don't exceed the if approved $20,000, that'll be $50,000. But what I'm thinking, it's approximately $2,500 of ARPA funds per business. So $20,000. I'm trying to do math in my head right quick. That could be another 8 or 9 businesses, all depending on how the funding goes. But there will be new businesses added to the program.
Awesome. Thank you. One more question. If we extend the outdoor areas, was there any money in there to try to make them look any different, or are they going to remain the same look and feel for this next year?
restrictions, and I won't say restrictions, I'll say one of the limitations that we have is, I believe the limitation is when we go over $1,000, then we have to use Davis-Bacon and pay prevailing wages. So it's possible that we'll be able to do something up to that amount, $990.45 or something like that. But if the subcommittee decides that they want to subsidize a portion of the improvements for outdoor dining and retail, then we get into the issue of prevailing wages.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Actually, just Councilmember Kwok, I know I said you, but a follow on to Councilmember Candel's question. Thank you. Is there a way that purchasers, in other things when we buy online or donate, we can opt as a purchaser to pay the fee? Is there a way in this program to allow, say I buy a card and I buy it for $100 and I choose to pay a percentage of the fee? Is that an option?
It probably wouldn't work because we would have to then individually go back, and the way it's set up now is we are paying all the fees because that's what we agreed to do in our original allocation. We would have to individually go back and take those individuals that wanted to pay their fees. We'd have to take them out of the system and redo their gift cards. I would suggest that you take those fees and just spend them at one of the businesses that you're participating in the program. And because the fees themselves aren't really that high, they're anywhere between $1 and $6 each card, but just depends on the amount of the fee, depends on the size of the card purchase.
Okay, thank you. And I assure you that on the card that I bought, I did spend more than $1 to $6. So
yes, you did. I saw that. Thank you very much.
Hopefully Michael has gone to bed and isn't on YouTube. No. Anyway, Councilmember Kwok, thank you very much for letting me ask that question.
Sure. I wanted to know, ultimately you're going to have 20 businesses signed up in the program, but how many overall applied to get in? Was it like 30, 40, 50, of which 20 were picked, or is it, 22 and then 20 got picked, or how popular was the program?
In the initial round, I had identified approximately 30 businesses that met the first round qualifications that were approved by council back in September. For a number of reasons, which I will not explain and get into you, that process it's been both exciting and it's been a little bit difficult. One of the issues that some of the businesses have is when they have high volume purchases where they have a number of people coming in, 2 or 3 or 4, where they're doing transactions per minute. It's very difficult for them to actually enter the e-card information into their system. So some of those businesses have opted out to not participate, which were originally on the list. Other businesses have also found some difficulty in actually trying to continue to train their cashiers in how to operate the program because of the turnover that they're having with employees. So while I'm working individually with those businesses that are in the program that are having that difficulty, there was a much larger list of businesses that were identified in the first round that's being narrowed down to the 11 slots that are available in the pilot program. And I've got another 2 slots left, and I'm pretty sure I'm going to be filling those this week. So for the next round, where there's going to be an additional 8 to 9 businesses for a total of 20, I have already received more applications for businesses than we have slots available in the program. And if approved tonight, I will be using that criteria as well as the spirit of which we've received the ARPA funds to help those businesses that have been distressed, to make that evaluation of which of those 8 businesses will be in the program.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you. So if there are no other questions, I will ask Ms. Erla to invite, and I see people have their hands raised already. So
thank you, Mayor. The first person to speak on this item is Grace Dixon, followed by Chris Herpick. And if anyone else would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome.
I support the relaxing the sign, sidewalk, and parking ordinance to support our local businesses. My question, if we are able to relax parking and right-of-way ordinances for commercial types of outdoor activity, as the staff report said, outdoor activity, then may we entertain the same logic for activity that includes parks and recreation, rather than solely relaxing our ordinances for business uses only? Obviously, I feel this idea is worth pursuing not only for our community's health, but public spaces attract consumer dollars as well. Is there a time limit that controls relaxation of ordinances? Is it 1 year, 5 year, 10 years? Can we apply some remaining ARPA funds towards exploring and/or expediting this relaxing of codes to happen for public parks and plazas and public spaces? Could this consultant also study public parking lot utilization in key lots? For instance, may we use a small amount of remaining ARPA funds to study the Oak Ridge parking lot, the gazebo lot, the Brannock lot, and others downtown? Other cities have gotten very creative in converting public streets, sidewalks, and public parking lots into public plazas even before the pandemic. I think Lafayette's downtown will thrive even more if we create adequate spaces to attract our community to get out of their cars, to walk around, and to stay and play in Lafayette, and to meet one another or renew friendships. Spaces may be temporary or long-term, but they do not need to be large. For instance, imagine if you could play pickleball downtown. Just think about it. Without getting into your car, and then go and enjoy lunch, again, without having to get into your car. Basically, my ask is that we explore taking tonight's approach to add parks, public spaces, and recreation spaces downtown where it is sorely needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? No, thank you.
The next speaker is Chris Herpick. And if anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature now, as there are currently no other hands raised.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, welcome.
Good evening, Chris Herpick. And I just had a really super cool question regarding the YIFT cards, just a clarifying question. One, huge fan of it. I think it's a great program. I think we've actually already taken advantage of one and plan to do more. But there was I think in your one of your slides, Thomas, there was an item regarding if a business, if $5,000 worth of YIFT cards are utilized at a business, it's taken off of the program. One, I think that's what it said, but two, is there a way to kind of track that or have some visibility to know kind of when that 5,000 limit should be would be approaching? Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, we'll wait until after all of the speakers, and then we can get those questions answered. So thank you very much. Do you have any additional comment or?
You're good.
Okay, thank you.
There are two additional speakers. The next speaker is Lauren Herpick, followed by Cheryl M.
Hi everyone, me again. You're getting both Herpicks tonight.
Welcome back.
Evening. So Lauren Herpick, Chris heard me on, and yeah, we took advantage of a number of gift cards. So he was like, wait, do we buy some more? So I'm going to follow up on what Grace had mentioned as well. So when I saw the language of expanding the easing of the parking, my immediate thought was, well, if we can do this for our restaurants and outdoor activity is important, and we just heard from PTR, then outdoor activity is important for also everyone to go out and enjoy, as well as also for our kids and community to be safe. And so kind of in that same vein, you know, are we able to sort of look at temporarily, partially closing public streets, on-street parking, and for recreation and also traffic safety. And particularly, I'm talking about School Street. I'm also thinking about the Oak Ridge parking lot, gazebo. And then I think also too, with Thomas including the amendment of Plaza Way, I would actually maybe even consider, could we make the argument of expand or closing that parking entirely in order to expand the size of Plaza Park? Any of us who has been to any of our fantastic events put on by the Chamber of Commerce, be it the Friday concerts in the summer, It's a Wonderful Life, Taste of Lafayette, we know how much our city has outgrown Plaza Park. And so I feel like if we can pilot this idea of removing parking, can we kind of continue that to make it maybe a long-term thing? And so I can easily see being able to easily replace outdoor dining with a number of issues, and this being, you know, kind of a good excuse to see how we can make our outdoor living a little bit better by adjusting some of our parking. Parking can be adjusted for a lot of programs. We made it easy for this, which I fully support. I have loved being able to sit and enjoy and eat outside. I'd like to do more of that for other uses too. So.
Thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, so our next speaker is coming in.
The next speaker is Cheryl M. And there are currently no other hands raised.
Welcome. There you go.
Yeah. Two things. One is if you go down the road to looking at these parking lots, is to make sure that you look at what the large parking lots are used for, such as employee parking, and not to disrupt the employee parking. And the second thing is if there's an abundance of businesses that need the support that don't fit the qualifications, or the employees are changing hands too quickly, is there a list of those businesses that might be up that we could just support in a greater way personally? And that was it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the speaker? Okay, I don't see any hands. Thank you very much. Are there any additional public speakers?
No, Mayor, I don't see any other hands raised.
Okay, we'll bring that back. And one question, I think, specifically, Thomas, that would have been, they may all have been directed to you, but I am going to step back on a couple of them. Is there a way for the public to see when businesses might be getting to their $5,000 limit? I assume so we can
there might be a way to
use our card.
There may be a way to put that on our website. Right now, there aren't that many businesses to track. So that's a possibility. We can put that on the city's website. I know that Yifty doesn't normally track that because they're not, you know, they're not in the, that's not one of the things that they track. So I would have to track that individually for businesses, and I could possibly put it on. But one of the things I'm definitely going to be doing is I'm going to be telling the businesses that, you know, you're approaching $3,000, you're approaching $4,000, you're approaching $4,500, and then they will know, so that we can try to avoid anyone actually either being in a business or being at the hotel or being in the jacuzzi at the spa and not allowed, you know, and then they won't be able to use their card. So we're working with businesses individually as they approach that limit. But right now, no one is nowhere near that limit right now.
Okay, thank you. And I think that was a great question, and thank you for that follow-up. On the other items, I think I'm going to look to City Manager Srivatsa or Mala, but in terms of the basic theme was very supportive of extending these and easing ordinances for this particular, for outdoor dining and other opportunities, but expanding that came out of the response to COVID, and are working to provide assistance to our businesses and our small businesses and otherwise. Theoretically, looking at this for other purposes, parking or safety measures.
Mayor, are you talking about, can these outdoor spaces, parking lots or on-street parking be used for recreation purposes?
Yeah, for specifically, a couple of speakers asked about, and it may not be that this is something that can be answered tonight, but that, you know, council can decide at another time whether to look at, but just in general. So there were a couple of parking lots, Gazebo Park, the Oak Bridge parking lot, those kinds of things that could be eased to put recreational opportunities there. And then the other one was easing parking restrictions around pathways, schools, on the way to and from schools.
Let me address the first question. Yes, the city-owned parking lots are public properties. The city council can decide to temporarily, say, block off Oak Bridge for a recreational use. It was purchased because it was an area of high parking demand. And as the businesses along Golden Gate Way flourish and grow, and the Park Theater opens, there may be a need for a public parking lot, but the city has the authority to temporarily change the use, and that's a city council policy question. As far as the, can we remove parking on the street to allow for safe passage to schools? Again, yes, it's a process that we usually, which involves a public review and your commission's looking at it and making a recommendation to you. Again, and I'm going to look to Mala to see if there are any prohibitions, but I think it's within the authority of the council to remove parking for certain times of the day or for during school days to allow for safe passage to schools.
That's correct.
I see nodding of the head. So, so thank you. And thank you to the public speakers for coming forward. And I was going to bring it back for council discussion. Vice Mayor Andori.
On that same topic, on that same topic, there's a third use that was suggested, and that's closing public or parts of public streets for recreation. And that runs up against some limitations we had to consider for this particular program, which relates to temporary closures and the definition of temporary, and that can be fairly complicated. I don't think we need to go into it, but it's a consideration.
Okay, I'm sorry. And I was looking at those, the recreation parks and things like that, all the same. So thank you for the additional clarification. And thank you for not engaging in a whole, I was watching Mala to make sure that we didn't start talking about this when it wasn't on the item. So, okay, so back to this recommendation. Are there any other comments or questions related to the matter before us, which is approving an additional $20,000 and also the adopting the resolution with the amendment? Vice Mayor Andori.
Just to get it on the table, I move that the council approve an additional $20,000 in ARPA funds for the Lafayette Shop Local e-card program, and that we adopt resolution 2022-20 as amended.
Okay.
I will second.
Great, thank you. And without any further discussion, we will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Kendall.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Andori.
Aye.
and I'm an aye. And so we have unanimously approved, and with gratitude to the subcommittee and to Thomas, who I know the subcommittee would say actually does all the work. And but thank you all. Thank you all for doing that, and excited to be able to continue the program. So thank you. So we will now move on to the staff reports. No public hearings. No items removed from the consent calendar, so we'll come to council and commission reports. Are there any updates or reports that council members want to give about activities they've participated in, or items for future agenda? Vice Mayor Andori.
Well, first I want to thank the Chamber of Commerce for organizing and hosting the Citizen of the Year dinner on Friday, which was incredible. It's great to be back doing that, and it was a very inspirational evening. And just one minor thing, Jay announced at the Citizen of the Year dinner that on Tuesday, the Taste of Lafayette tickets are going on sale, but I checked the website to see if that's true. They're on sale now. So I've got mine, and you better get yours quick because they're going to sell out real fast.
That's May 17th, right? All right.
Yeah, yes, it is. And thank you. I will go on as soon as we're done with our meeting. Councilmember Kwok or Kandel, do you have any items? Councilmember Kwok?
I'd like to add an item to the April 11th agenda, because as we know, April 22nd is Earth Day, and I would like to let the month of April go by without us focusing on the climate crisis and having a discussion on what cities like Lafayette can be doing to be part of the solution. And so if we could do that before Earth Day and turn our attention just during that meeting a little bit to that topic, then I would have something to report on and share with the group and have a discussion.
Okay, and our other council members by a nodding of the head. And so we will look at and appreciate the importance of having that happen in April. And we'll look at where that agenda, how busy it is. But yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other? So I do have just a couple of things. Want to echo Vice Mayor Andori, the Citizen of the Year. It was great to be able to be back together and celebrate basically 3 years of Citizens of the Year. The Cronks were there, Rick and Janet Cronk, and were able to be recognized. I think it was a couple of weeks away from the Citizen of the Year dinner when the shelter in place began. And so they were there, and then recognizing Janet Thomas and Bill Frazier, and Wei Tai did a great job in an inspirational words, related to that. And Janet and Bill both gave really very inspirational messages. Oh, and excuse me, Nirup Srivatsa also had a very inspirational message as well. So it felt really good to be back together and celebrating what makes Lafayette what it is, which is all of the community volunteers and people coming together to not just talk about what needs to be done, but to get out there and to do things. And so I almost want Janet's speech too, because she was talking about a teacher that she had, and she caused people of all ages to sort of gasp when she said that the teacher was Jane Goodall. And so just really things we learn about each other when we go to, we hear those events. I also want to acknowledge that we did give a resolution, a proclamation celebrating Vicky Shakwa as she goes off in her retirement from the library, and she's going to be a docent ranger for 6 months out of the year in a national park, which Carl will be able to remember. I'm forgetting right now, but I suggested maybe she take a picture of her proclamation and have it on her phone, because she won't have anywhere to necessarily hang it. Which park?
Grand Teton.
Thank you.
Oh,
one of
nice.
my favorite parks, and I can't believe that I forgot. But then on Saturday, I want to give a shout out and a thanks to Katie Foreman, who has been coordinating on behalf of the schools the Street Smarts education program. But on Saturday, she actually, and they had more than 20 families, it was supposed to be the limit, but a bike safety workshop. And so there were parents and students up to 6th grade. I think she ended up saying there might have been a 7th grader there, but they worked on how to wear their helmets. And it was Bike East Bay who put it on and actually found a grant to be able to do that at Stanley Middle School. And so I went over and got to see everybody, riding their bikes and learning how to be safe. And they ended up going out on the trail as a group. I'll save an update on Community Day for the next meeting. Councilmember Dawson and I met as the city schools subgroup and met with the representatives from the Lafayette School District and Acalanes. Narup, Mike Moran, and Chief Aldred provided updates. As you all know, our focus has very much been on traffic and safety around the schools in partnership. And Mike gave a great update on timing and when tools coming back with the tool design with their recommendations. The Lafayette School District did provide a letter to Mike within the few days after that with some thoughts on the recommendation. So that'll be given to, if it hasn't already, to TransCirc as they look at the recommendations that they'll be bringing forward to us. The Superintendent Whitmore for the Lafayette School District also gave a very brief update on the demographic study, and we can get copies or send a link to you to see the report. They are anticipated to experience another loss of approximately 300 students over the next year. They're hoping as they come back in, and COVID and the masking and all of that, that that number may change. The demographer's modeling is a little different from what I recall when we did it, and there hasn't been one for 6 to 8 years in the school district, but they only include, and Narup can help me if I stumble on this, but they only include those projects where there's a definite date of occupancy, like they can clearly know. So for example, if you look at the terraces, because it's still, while we've approved it and it's in the pipeline, it's still going through the appeal process and the legal process. So they did not put that in there. They base it on historical data and births and things like that. They do have a conversion rate or a formula that could be used on projects going forward that would say, this is how many units we think that a development of, how many students a development of this size would have. But anyway, they very high level overview. I listened to a little bit of it when they did the presentation. One of the things that came to my mind is that we haven't had a joint city schools meeting in several years due to COVID. The schools, have had a lot going on. We all have, but I think it's fair to say our schools have probably, just fair to say that the impact has been greater on them. So I would like to request that the city manager and staff work with the superintendent to schedule a joint city schools meeting and include the Acalanes School District as well, which I don't think we've done that ever, maybe, but to have us be able to discuss things like the traffic study update and the demographer study, but basically come together. We can work on the agenda at another time. But I think it would be important to do that, and to do that before Superintendent Whitmore officially leaves the district. The new school board selected a new superintendent. I think we all got the press release. Brent Stevens, who is coming from Berkeley School District, will be coming on board on July 1st. And so if he's available to come as well, that would be great. But I think those were the big things. Both districts were very appreciative of the school site work and the partnership that we've been doing with in partnership. And our next meeting, we looked at discussing and bringing in some other items besides traffic and circling back to mental health, and with the very thankful for the ARPA funds to Alpi for mental health, but circling back in those meetings and having an update on what's happening at the schools as well. So I think that might be my longest update in a while. So
I'm sorry,
yeah.
I forgot. Sorry to not remember this earlier. Because I'm so sorry to have missed last Friday. I had a long scheduled, we call a mandatory family event.
Yeah.
Where I could not get out of it, and it was far away. So it was really, really, really sad to miss it. The other thing that I do want to say is that something I have been working on, and I'll be sending out soon, is a response to the audit of the HCD and the RENA allocations. And there's going to be a response and a press release coming out from CALI, which is the California Association Alliance of Local Electeds. And I've been working on that, and we'll be quoting Steve Glazer and others who helped in that effort, and explaining how much the auditors agreed with the Embarcadero Institute's results, and how they absolutely validated what went on in that analysis. And so at some point, if we want to bring that back and get a further explanation of what that actually meant, maybe we can do that later, but I want to wait to get these pieces out first.
Okay, thank you for that update. And I did read the document, and thank you to Diana for sending that to us as well. Okay, well, if there are no additional comments, we will move on. Oh, and I just wanted to say that Councilmember Dawson, we know, just for the record, all of us would love to be at the Citizen of the Year, and sometimes and at every council meeting, but we all have our family obligations as well. And so thank you, Councilmember Candell, for acknowledging that. Of course, we'd love to be at everything. And now we will move to City Manager Servatza for the City Manager's update.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to report that last Friday, management staff met at an all-day retreat following your council retreat, where you established your 4 priorities. It was an excellent day. We spent the morning coming up with ways to attract and retain staff, which is on everyone's minds these days. And then in the afternoon, we learned about the importance of performance metrics and having accountable work plans and how we develop them. And we then went into developing the 5 department work plans together. I think for the first time, each department came up with their realistic work plans, and the others were able to look at them, volunteer to help, because we don't work as in silos. We're all interrelated and we help each other out. So we were able to critique each other's work plans and get an idea of the workload for the coming year. And I will be providing you an update at your April 11th meeting. This is a draft, and it will move into the preparation of next year's budget. And that's all I had.
Great, thank you. And thank you for doing that. And moving on now to item C, 11C, and I'll turn it over to Councilmember Kwok and Vice Mayor Anduri.
Thank you very much. On this item, Vice Mayor Anduri and I serve on the Environmental Task Force as liaisons, and the 9-member ETF has 1 vacancy, which we'd like to recommend to be filled this evening. We're fortunate that 2 amazing volunteer members of our community applied for this role, and both of them were extremely qualified. We were extremely impressed with their enthusiasm, dedication, and expertise. And so it was a very difficult decision. Ashley, Louisiana from Recycle Smart was one applicant, as well as Colleen McCormick, one of the co-owners of La Marinda Music. It was a difficult decision, as I mentioned, but we did come to the conclusion to recommend tonight the appointment of Colleen McCormick to the Environmental Task Force.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Andrew, did you have anything to add to that? No. Any questions? Okay. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak to this item? And I don't see any hands going up, so I will bring it back for a motion. And I suppose Councilmember Kwok, would that be your motion?
Sure. I move that we
Thank you.
appoint Colleen McCormick to the Environmental Task Force.
Okay.
And I'll second that.
Great, thank you. Councilmember, I'll go to the roll call vote. Councilmember Kendall.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Andoury.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And I want to thank the subcommittee. And I read through the applications and know both of the applicants and know what a difficult decision that was, and want to thank the Ashley, Louisiana, and Colleen McCormick for applying, and all citizens who apply to our volunteer commissions. I know that sometimes we're in these situations where we would really love to expand the size of the commission to be able to get these great applicants in. And I just want to encourage anyone who applies for our commissions and doesn't get in, on this first time to try, please come back, because there are always opportunities coming up. But thank you to the subcommittee and the applicants. And congratulations, I guess. So, okay. So with that, agenda item 12, we have no written communications. And so we will move on to adjournment. Are there any items or any reasons to adjourn in memory of anyone? Or okay.
Can we adjourn in thanks to Sarah Allen, who is retired as
yes.
our assistant planning director after 14 years with the city. She's been amazing, and I think her last day was last week.
Friday. Yeah,
and in appreciation.
Thank you. And speaking of things that I hated to miss, but the going away party. So thank you, Councilmember Kwok. That very appropriate. And thank you to Sarah Allen for her years of service, and good luck in her next adventure. Okay, well, we are at 10:13. We are adjourned. Thank you all for a great meeting.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.